I'd like to call to order this regular meeting of Lane County Board of Commissioners for Tuesday, January 8th, 2019. And the first item is adjustments to the agenda. Any adjustments to the agenda from the board? And
Mr. Chair, I just wanted to maybe get a flavor for the plan for the day. You know, we have our board chair elections, and we have our public comment and our emergency business, if any, and a pretty big consent calendar that people might have questions about. Do you anticipate us going till noon or 3 or 5 or?
I anticipate us being able to complete our business this morning before lunchtime or by lunchtime, and then we will be coming back into session at 3:30 for our meeting with the legislators and the courts folks.
Oh, yeah. And then is there an executive session?
No, there's none planned today.
Okay. I think I'd like to pull one of the items on the consent calendar, and that is the item A2, the item on establishing Board of Commissioners meeting roles and rules of conduct. Since we have new commissioners, I'd like to highlight why we have that and why we're doing that.
Great. Any other adjustments to the agenda? This is the time if you want to pull something from consent calendar to pull it. Any adjustments from staff?
No.
Seeing none, then we'll move on to Commissioner's business. And the first item is Commissioner Sorensen.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. This is quite an important day in the 2-year life cycle of the Lane County Board of Commissioners. And yesterday we had an excellent day in swearing in our two new members and our returning member. But part of the annual cycle of the Board of Commissioners is to recognize the outgoing chair of the Board of Commissioners. And today, and normally that would fall on the vice chair, but we don't have a vice chair at the moment. So in our kind of board protocol, when the vice chair isn't available and the chair is not available, then the senior member of the board, which I guess is now me as of this moment, gets to do things that vice chair gets to do. So one of the things I want to do today is recognize the service of Commissioner Bozovich and his service on the Board of Commissioners, and the fact that he is leaving as board chair today, having served a 1-year period under our Lane County Charter. When we elect a board chair, it's a 1-year period. So let me just say a few things about Jay. As you may know, Jay is an engineer, and he works really hard, and he really has a facility for facts and figures and arithmetic and even math beyond arithmetic, which I realize now exists. And I just think that one of the things that Commissioner Bozovich has done is work extremely hard. One of the things that I really admire about you, Jay, is that you have worked as hard or harder than any of the then, not counting today, then 5 Lane County commissioners. And I think that with your radio show and your outreach and your willingness to answer your constituents' emails, your involvement with the Association of Oregon Counties, and really through this whole year of 2018, you've been extremely fair to all the commissioners, including me, in terms of calling on us and making sure we're recognized and our issues are brought in front of the board. And I really do appreciate your service on the board. So one of my pleasant duties is to present you with a plaque and with a gavel, ceremonial gavel, which I see is upside down, now right side up. How, you would appreciate that, right? Right side up.
Yeah, my OCD would have been,
That's right. So this says, presented to Jay Bozovich in gratitude for his service as board chair, Lane County Commissioners 2018. Congratulations.
thank you, Pete. Thank you. 2018 was a good year. Got a chance to talk a lot about it yesterday, so I won't spend time on that today because we've got a lot to get done. And the first of those things is to elect a new chair. So I will
Chair.
take nominations.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Farr.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I'd like to nominate Commissioner Sorensen as Chair of the Board of Lane County Commissioners.
Second.
So it's been, Commissioner Sorensen's been nominated and seconded. Do you accept the nomination? Any other nominations for chair?
May I, am I allowed to ask a question?
Sure you are.
Why are you doing that? Why are you nominating Pete? I'm just curious the rationale, because I was going to try and jump and do that with you, Pat.
Okay, well,
Yeah.
the Commissioner Sorensen can confirm this. I wasn't going to say anything, but for the last several years, I've asked him if he wanted me to nominate him, and he said no. I didn't ask him this year. I just did it.
Yeah. Any other nominations for chair? Any other nominations for chair? I will consider the nominations closed. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
We will switch places.
This is the left-hand side of the room, Jay.
That's okay.
Can you make it?
This is not politics.
Thank you. These chairs don't go high enough for me.
I'm the least technologically inclined of the current 5 commissioners, so please excuse me while I plug in my computer. I'll get you to plug that in for me over
Please excuse me, I switched chairs.
there. Yeah,
Is there any particular alphabet?
no, just that one, yeah, the blue one. Well, first of all, thank you very much for, oh, we'll wait till Jay gets back here.
Ergonomics. All set.
Okay, thank you very much. I think I'd like to not make any comments right now. I'll make a few later, but this time I would like to move to item 2B, 2C, which is our election of vice chair.
Mr. Chair?
Okay, Commissioner Bernie.
I'd like to take the opportunity to nominate Heather Buck as vice chair of this board. I believe that will provide a signal, a message, and regardless of that, Heather is eminently qualified, so I nominate Heather.
Okay, there's a motion to nominate Commissioner Heather Buck as the vice chair. Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second the motion.
Okay, are there other motions, or I'm not, we're supposed to go by Robert's Rules of Order up here, but it also says we're supposed to also not go by Robert's Rules of Order when we don't need to or don't want to. So is there any other nominations? Okay, hearing none, we will move on to the vote on on electing Commissioner Buck as the vice chair.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
discussion to the motion?
Very good. Go ahead.
No, are you going to ask for discussion to the motion?
I am, now that you reminded me, we are going to have discussion.
Thank you. Mr. Chair.
Yeah, go for it.
I appreciate the nomination of Ms. Buck. Looking forward to serving with you as a county commissioner. It's a big jump from never serving in elective office to being the vice chair of the Board of County Commissioners. It's going to take a great deal of diligence and effort on your part. I know that you're up to it because I've been, excuse me, observing your work for a lot of years, and you are both diligent, attentive to detail, and your motivation to do the right thing has always been evident. So I'm going to support the motion and look forward to working with you.
Any other comments before we move to a vote? I'll just say that, being a board officer, whether it's board chair or vice chair, means that you get no greater say at a board meeting. You get no greater vote at a board meeting, but you do have additional duties. And I appreciate Commissioner Buck's willingness to serve in this position, and our combined years of service on the board will be sufficiently large to overcome any lengthy period on the part of me or any not lengthy period on your part to have a good leadership for the board for this year. And I think that your background, the more I learn about it, the more I read about it, it's really extraordinary, and we really appreciate your willingness to serve in this capacity. So, any further comments? Not seeing any further comments, we will move to a vote. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say no. And Commissioner Buck, congratulations on being elected vice chair. And with that, this, and really this is all you get, is a name tag indicating you're vice chair in case you're called on to conduct the board meeting. Now I'd like to turn to public comment, and I know the citizens have been waiting patiently while the board conducts its important responsibilities under our Lane County Charter. And as is customary, Ms. Devin Ashbridge brings me the list of people to come up, so I'll give it to you in baseball order. Heather Salicki up, Shanna Stahl on deck, is that the right term? And Wayne Martin is third. So we'll first hear from Heather, then Ms. Stahl, then Mr. Martin, and then there's a couple more people, and I'll call you too.
Mr. Martin's going to go before me.
Oh, okay, very good. So, Mr. Martin, just state your name and your, if you live in Lane County, the district you live in.
Date of birth?
No. Nope. Passport? Nope. DMV papers? No.
I'm Wayne Martin. I live on Taylor Street. My first remarks are, I'm very happy and privileged to speak to this body right now, especially with its new commissioners. Congratulations. And I think you'll do well. I'm somewhat of a frequent visitor here, so you'll probably understand why in a minute, but welcome. I want to also say some words of thanks to county staff and to some extent the board already in what you have done to provide services and safety to 100 or more residents at the Camp Highway 99 facility. That was put together very, very hastily and with good intention, and some very sweet things occurred there that I've had a chance to witness firsthand as I make frequent trips there. Now, As of yesterday, I began to have a strong intuition that there was a move to close the camp on Friday. I'd like to suggest that you delay that you do whatever is in your power to convince others at the county staff level that you delay that. If they are notified today that they have 3 days before the Friday eviction date, it will create immense confusion, bedlam, anger, panic, stress that will be intolerable at a camp where people are living on top of each other. They have belongings that they've acquired since coming there with backpacks. We, those of us who have tried to assist them in every way possible, have provided bedding, extra clothes, extra coats. So from a strictly household effects point of view, no one should be given 3 days to be asked to leave anybody's premises, especially if it's their home. I hope you understand what I'm saying from an ethical point of view, if not a practical one. It's going to create some anger that I won't be particularly fond of amongst some colleagues who are part of what's called the activist community. I don't consider myself a part of that community. I'm more of an actionist than an activist, but I'm very concerned that the public presentations of those who have cared about this group of people that have been camping is going to be significant, and it's going to be noted in the press. Finally, I think I simply want to say that it's going to create, as it did with the closing of the BLM property and with the closing of Whoville, an immense number of police citations, arrests, and discomforts. The courts will feel the impact, the police will feel the impact, and the residents with nowhere to go will feel the impact. That basically is going to cost you more money than waiting an extra few days and giving them a 1-week notice. The costs that I can see and that I've experienced are going to be significant, and it's not worth the money. Thank you for listening, and I urge you to take up this matter after the public comments have been concluded. Again, welcome to the two of you.
Thank you. So Heather is next. And please just give your name and what district you live in, please.
My name is Heather Solicki, and I'm in Pete Sorensen's district. And today I'm here on behalf of Wade Bird Clinic to thank you. Over the break, we were able to mobilize a rapid response team to set up a temporary health clinic across from the camp on 99, together with Steve Manella at the county and Roxanne O'Brien. We were able to provide medical services and mental health counseling to the nearby campers. By making these services more accessible to them, we were able to treat 75 patients with complex needs, providing some relief and preventing costly, stressful visits to the emergency room. Wound dressings, burns, bites, cuts, skin infections, and lung problems were among the most common issues to address. We also help people with pneumonia, diabetes management, heart conditions, and what we really found is by treating people for these acute care issues and inviting them back to come to our office for longer term care, we were able to see patients also in our office later on. Unlike the paper needs assessment surveys, by having an integrated team of professionals to help each individual, we were able to conduct a great needs assessment and really find out what the core issues were for people. Our 2-week pilot at the Lindholm Center strengthened our resolve for providing more street outreach, medicine, and having a licensed medical professional on site to support our community shelter system. We'd love to come out twice a month to continue this program to really reach people. Whitebird Clinic has grown from a small group of student activists and concerned practitioners providing crisis services and free medical care for counterculture youth in Eugene to now one of the crucial safety net social services agencies, employing 200 staff members, and we have over 400 volunteers. In order to meet the growing need in the community, Whitebird's expanding crisis, medical, and dental services to their own buildings, and we have a new urgent care clinic being planned for our existing dental facility, which we're moving to a building that'll be twice as large. We understand the situation at Camp 99 is not ideal, but we urge you to keep trying to find these solutions for safe spots for individuals who are experiencing homelessness. I'd like to ask you not to close the camp without looking at the individual needs of the campers. For those of us who's been over there, we've come to see each person as an individual, and we'd like to know that they each have an opportunity to connect with some type of transitional housing when they leave. So whether it's a rest stop, car camp, the Dawn to Dawn program that they're developing, but to look at each individual and link them with the right services. We greatly appreciate your commitment to improving our community resilience and look forward to partnering with you in 2019.
Thank you very much. Next person on the list, Shanna Stahl. Okay. Okay. Okay, we have Heather, Wayne, Shanna, Chris, I think it says Chris. You know, see, your duties as vice chair include reading the names. What's that name?
McAllister.
Chris McAllister, that's the consensus up here. Welcome, and please state your name and your district in the county if you live in the county.
Mr. Chair, esteemed commissioners, my name is Chris McAllister. I come from District 2, represented now by Joe Burney. Thank you, and welcome, Mr. Burney. I come before you as a citizen of Springfield who works heavily in our homeless duties. I currently triage a couple situations for individuals who have been displaced since October, and 2 of them are medical respite who have been displaced into a motor home that cannot be placed anywhere and is illegal to drive. They've been displaced several times by law enforcement with nowhere for them to go. I understand that law enforcement does not even have somewhere where they could park someone who is temporarily homeless. And so I'd like to encourage the county to look forward on options for people like that. I also thank you very much for the support from Commissioner Farr and his leadership on some of our activities on the PHB, such as the MLK building that's coming up for our Fuse clients, as well as looking at other options throughout our county because we truly need safe places to be. We were looking at 1,600 individuals trying to be placed over this winter because our point in time count, which is our individual count for HUD to try and identify how many people we have on one given night of homelessness, found that we had 1,600 people unsheltered in our county last year. With that in mind, we have 1 less. While the person passed away up in Portland under a bridge, they have over 11 years on the street here. They were up in Portland to see the funeral of a parent. And then because they have no options here, they have no options there, and they passed away under a temperature that would not have activated our Egan warming centers here. We do not have adequate shelter for people in emergency. So I really look forward to building options in 2019, not 2020, not 2023, but in 2019 that are meaningful, that can set a systemic approach that will continue to stay on top of this. With over 130 homeless people coming into our community a month, according to the TAC data, we really need to be on top of this or else we're going to fall behind. And we can't afford to fall behind in what has been a recessed community that is looking for hope. And I feel like we have hope right before us and in our future, so please help us. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Michael Corrigan, followed by Dave. Again, please state your name and the district you live in. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Michael Kerrigan. Sorry, I got a bit of a cold. And Pete, I'm a proud member of your district. We have a crisis, a housing shelter crisis. The past few years, I've helped the county with a point-in-time homeless count. I became very, very aware of the depth and breadth of this crisis. We have unhoused folks throughout Lane County, and according to the TAC consultants, hired by the city and county to help plan the creation of the homeless shelter, as just been said, 130 people every month will become homeless in Lane County. We need all hands on deck. We need to do a variety of things to deal with this problem. And I support Chris McAllister has been a strong voice for developing a multitude of solutions to the problem. I'm committed to help with this. Let's all come together a year ahead and do it all. Short term, please don't shut down the Highway 99 camp on Friday. That's too soon. I agree with my friend Wayne Martin. Let's come together. Let's do it right. Let's make sure we don't exacerbate the problem, but come up with a solution that works for all. These are people that have been out the camp. It's, those people need to go to a variety of places. Yes, there's too many people in a small place, but it's helping people. It's making a difference. Let's give them more than a few days notice to come up with the next plan for their life. So thank you very much, and welcome to the new commissioners. It's going to be a great year, and thanks to all of you for your service.
Thank you. Okay, Dave, and then is there anyone else that wants to be recognized to present public comment this morning? Please raise your hand so I can call on you. Okay, go ahead, Dave.
Hi.
Name and
Dave
district.
Ivan Piccioni. I live on Van Buren and 7th. I'm not sure which district that is, but.
You're in the heart of the South Eugene district.
All right, there you go. Well, I don't know you yet, but I have met with Joe Burney at our Revolution meeting, and he's expressed that he's a very strong labor advocate. And so we had this conversation going on between the whole group about jobs versus the environment. And I think we came to the happy conclusion that there are a lot of jobs that can be that can be created and assigned to people that could work a little bit or 8 out, however much they can, and plant trees, fruits, grow food, protect the water from pollution, the air from too much carbon dioxide. Another thing that I wanted to ask you, I don't know if this is in your realm as county commissioners, but this is a really touchy subject about abortion. I don't know if Planned Parenthood receives any money from either Eugene or the county, but I think they should. I think that abortion should be subsidized. Now, I don't think abortions are the best situation. I think the best situation is prevention. I do happen to believe that there is an intrauterine experience that fetuses go through. They're alive. They're not a piece of just dead tissue. But I do think that it should be a woman's choice to determine that, and that money should not play a role in that. I just checked my phone again to keep up with the population growth. We're growing at 1% per year, 1.07% per year. So if the planet has 7.4 billion people, that's more than 70 million people a year in the world, not just in America, but throughout the entire Earth. And so that's 70 million more people. That's about the size of a medium-sized small country.
Dave, we do have a 3-minute rule, so please keep that in mind.
Oh, I thought it was going to beep or something.
Well, it's about to.
Okay. Well, we didn't have this problem before when there was less people in the world. And sometimes, I think the abortion issue could provide more solutions than problems. I'm not insensitive to people who love babies and all that, but anyway, so I'll leave it at that.
All right, well, thank you very much for your public comment this morning. Is there anyone that wants to be recognized to present public comment this morning that hasn't spoken? Okay, good. Thank you so much. We welcome public comment at our meetings, and thank you for taking the time to come present items for us. Our next item on our agenda is our commissioner response to public comments and/or other issues and remonstrance. And our good friend, former Commissioner Bill Dwyer, insisted on the word remonstrance to be put on this item, and for whatever reason, it's still on there. And because in the legislature, they give legislators, as former Representative Farr and former Senator Sorensen know, they give legislators time to talk about things that are on their mind, may or may not be relevant to the comments given by the public or by the board agenda. And I just want to invite our commissioners, and in light of our new members, I'd like to ask your indulgence to waive the 2-minute limit that we have put on our remonstrance and just give everyone an opportunity to say something if they want to at this first meeting of the year. So Commissioner Bozovich.
Thank you. So I'll just start by saying that we are going to be doing a lot about housing in 2019. You know, we've been working on projects that are coming up in the queue, whether it's our 51-unit supported housing on MLK, Commons at MLK, or it's our project in cooperation with Homes for Good to bring workforce housing downtown here, right at 6th and Oak. In addition to that, next week we are going to be looking at awarding $1.5 million out to housing projects for affordable housing. So, you know, that's coming up next week on our agenda. So it's not that we haven't been looking at this and are not doing things. So I just want to make sure people understand things will happen in 2019. Whether we can achieve everything that the TAC report wants us to do in a single year, that's not probably possible. It doesn't, you know, just to plan, design, and construct what they're asking for is going to take more than a year. But hopefully we'll have a conversation later this month about developing a long-term strategic plan to get to zero unsheltered in this community, because that's where the TAC report gets to, at least for single adults. If we follow their recommendations, their report says we should be able to get to zero unsheltered. With the indulgence of the board, though, I wouldn't, you know, we had lots of comment about Camp 99. Could I ask the administrator maybe to address what the plan is for Camp 99 right now?
Why don't we do this? Why don't we just have the comments, and then under our, and I'll move the administrator's report up earlier in the meeting so we can now ask questions. But I think I'd rather just have everybody have a shot on their remonstrance and or public comment and issues. I'd like to get everybody through that, and then maybe we can call on the administrator before we even go on to other items. Sounds good?
Sure.
Okay. Any other commissioners' comments, remonstrances? Commissioner Farr?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for the comments this morning. You know, I'll wait anxiously for Ms. Mokrajski's discussion, but I drive to work from Bethel each morning. I live in Bethel, and I have two routes that I can come to work. I can drive down the freeway, which is often bottlenecked. We're working on the crossing of the Willamette River as we speak. But usually I drive down Highway 99, down Roosevelt Avenue, and get onto Railroad Boulevard and come in down Pearl Street and into the administration, into the building. And as I drive down there this morning, I passed no less than 13 different places where people are receiving housing assistance in one form or another. Some of it is supportive housing, some of it is more impromptu and more emergency housing. I'm going to name the places. I drive by Camp 99, which of course is in Bethel. Drive by St. Vincent de Paul's Dusk to Dawn program, which we have been operating for, this is the third year. The new Dawn to Dusk program, which is preparing to begin operation, and also St. Vincent de Paul's Lindholm Center. I drive past Sponsors, which has supportive housing for people who are recently released from prison. I drive by the Roosevelt Rest Stop, Opportunity Village, and this morning I also drove by Community Supported Shelters Veterans Housing Project, which is at basically at Northwest Expressway and Chambers Street. I drive by the Veterans Safe Spot on the other side of the railway lines from me. Drive by the Mission. I drive by Square One Villages. A total of just at that count on my 7-mile drive in here, 13 different places that we're providing housing. But you notice that I didn't mention another kind of housing that we used to see quite frequently, and that was unsanctioned housing on street corners, unsanctioned housing on empty lots. I think that we're beginning to address that. Camp 99 helped in that respect. It helped people have a safe and sanctioned place to stay. We need to, and we all agree with this, everyone I speak to agrees with the fact that we need to continue to make sure that people have a safe and sanctioned place to stay. And as we continue the discussion regarding the closure of 99, we had I was informed of it at 8:45 this morning was when the notice went out of the Board of County Commissioners. As we do move forward with the transition to different places to live, the worst thing that's going to happen is that we don't provide every single person who's staying at Camp 99 right now with a safe and sanctioned place to live that fits their needs, their requirements, and the conditions that they live with. Some people can live in communal housing. Some people have conditions that prevent and preclude them from living in communal housing. So as we move forward with that discussion, I'm not at this point prepared to say, Mr. Mokrahajski, we cannot close the camp down on Friday. I may say that before this meeting is over. I may suggest that before this meeting is over. But I need to be assured that every single person has an option, and that the only option is not communal living, which some people simply are not going to be able to because of conditions, whether it be physical, whether it be mental or behavioral health issues. There are conditions that exist that preclude communal housing. So I'll wait for that discussion as we move forward. Camp 99 has provided a great benefit in that it did give people a safe place to live. Not a nice place to live in particular, because when it rains, it's wet. When it's windy, it blows. And we do have safe sanitary toilets, and we do have garbage disposal, and really a fence for people to live behind. But it's still not an ideal, perfect place to live, but it's a legal and safe place, sanctioned place to live where they're not going to get moved along. And I think that was a huge step in the right direction, knowing from the day that we opened the camp that it wasn't going to be there beyond probably not this long. I think a few people really thought that it would be there as long as it has been. It's taken longer to provide a response. The fact that it's closed with this suggested to be closed this coming Friday is a little bit sooner than maybe than some people thought. But we did know it was going to close, and we knew that the conditions there is too large of a camp, really, for people to live comfortably and for people to live in concert with one another, and in concert in particular with the neighbors surrounding the camp. So as we transition into different forms of housing, different safe places for people to stay, where they can stay dry and not die on the street, then it's important that we make certain that everybody has an opportunity, that it's not just a communal living opportunity, that we do have other safe, sanctioned, and compatible with the neighborhood as much as possible places for people to move. And I may have more to say. Thank you.
Okay, do any other commissioners want to make some remonstrance? Any? Okay, go ahead, Commissioner Buck.
I just want to appreciate and take a moment to thank the people that came out to speak today. My background is housing, and I look forward to working on a lot of different broad issues relating to housing and some serious action plans to follow within the calendar year of 2019. I think there's a lot of potential for us to do some really good work there. And since Highway 99 was mentioned, and in excuse me, response to some of Commissioner Farr's comments, I just want to take a moment to declare that I may have a potential conflict of interest with items relating to St. Vincent de Paul. I'm related to the director of that agency and have an ownership interest in a company that provides that agency services. I'll continue the conversation today, but if an actual conflict arises, I will most likely ask to be, step outside. And so if a motion comes to the board, then that can be made and have somebody call me back in if something should happen either today or in the future.
Okay. Commissioner?
I fortunately have no conflicts. I'll vote on everything. I would just like to say this. I guess Commissioner Bozovic, his question was my question, so I guess we will talk later, because forgive me, but the request by everyone that spoke seems so modest and reasonable, and I just don't know why this is occurring, and I'll learn why, and I look forward to that. Hey, I'm not going to posture or grandstand. I'm just going to say this. I've developed low-income housing. I just ended doing consulting with the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, which in one of the Los Angeles communities is developing over 500 units of low-income housing, and it will be off-grid. There are so many opportunities to tackle so many issues. I don't know how or whether I will weigh in on different things. I can tell you that my heart will follow the heart of Commissioner Farr. I really, really appreciate your sensitivity and agree with it 100%. And my inputs on program will follow the pragmatic following dollars and see how we can't match them to our priorities. But I have nothing substantive other than to thank everyone that spoke.
Thank you, Commissioner Berney. I just wanted to take a few minutes myself at this first meeting of the year to make a few comments. First of all, I look forward to working with this board in a bipartisan, nonpartisan, multi-partisan, or in any other way that is going to be to the benefit of our community. I want to recognize that each of us comes to this board supported by their district and by their families. And I want to remind us all of how important our families are and how we rely on them for giving us the opportunity to serve on the board. I think today we're at a historic moment in our Board of Commissioners. 2 months ago, the voters replaced 2 commissioners with 2 new commissioners. I've been on this board a long time. I can't remember that actually ever occurring. In my view, the people spoke, and they have demanded a new dawn. I think the people want results for people. They want to open up new opportunities. They want to lift up people's lives. I think we should work to redeem the promise of the American dream for every family, advancing progress for every community. We must be pioneers for the future, and we must open up these opportunities with public education, workforce development, and good-paying jobs. In my view, we must champion the middle class. We must address an existential threat of our time, which is climate crisis. We must protect our constituents, and we must have an end to discrimination against LGBTQ in our community. I want to also say that we have a lot of work ahead of us. We have a lot of problems that we have to address, and I really appreciate the goodwill of all the commissioners in trying to address our major problems. I'd like to take a minute to say something about the homeless situation in our community that I have not heard from the people at the TAC report when they spoke earlier, and that is that there are communities in the United States in the present day that have tackled the problem of chronic homelessness, and they have solved the problem. And specifically, Common Dreams reported in December 28 that Bergen County, New Jersey, ended chronic homelessness in their community. And the speaker at a regional conference on ending homelessness, who is the Director of Health and Human Services and Housing for Bergen County, New Jersey, Julia Orlando, said basically that, number one, she's willing to help communities all over the country if we want to call her. Number two, that there is a 5-step process to ending it. And I would just commend this article from Common Dreams to anyone who is thinking that we cannot solve this problem, that is somehow an unsolvable problem. And with that optimism, I really hope that this year will be a very positive year and we'll be able to work on these issues. Now, if we have any emergency business, I guess I'll ask the commissioners and Mr. Mokrajski, do we have any emergency business, item 5?
No, not today.
So let's go right back to our agenda and we'll go over to item 8A, which is our county administration announcements. And I guess I'd like to, even though it's Mr. Mokrajski's announcements, maybe you could tell us what those announcements are, and with the focus on the Camp 99, and then we can call on Commissioner Bozovich and any other commissioners to ask questions about this, because quite frankly, I don't know anything about this.
Sure, I'm happy to, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. Why don't I focus my comments on Camp 99? So I'd like to just briefly, particularly for the benefit of the new commissioners, but for all of you, to just take us back to mid to late October of 2018, when we had over 100 individuals in an unsanctioned camp in downtown Eugene on the county-owned Butterfly Lot. There were no services, there was no support or infrastructure. It was an informal, unsanctioned camp that happened, and it continued to grow over the course of several weeks. The county and the city of Eugene recognized that there were some solutions that needed to be identified. And in this case, the county stepped up, identified a county-owned property, which is now called Camp 99. It's about a quarter-acre property owned by the county that we identified and set up over the course of 2 days in late October. We then worked collaboratively with all of the individuals that were at the unsanctioned downtown camp and successfully moved 100% of those individuals over a 2-day period. On a Saturday and Sunday, we set the camp up on Friday and Saturday and then moved people late Saturday and into Sunday. 100% of those individuals were moved. There was not one arrest that occurred, and that was a goal of ours from the beginning. We worked in collaboration with EPD and social service agencies and advocates in the community to make sure that we found a more safe, more accountable structure. We set up porta potties, we had lighting and cameras, hand washing stations, needle dispensaries, trash receptacles. We even purchased arbovitas from Jerry's to make the camp a respectable place. But we said from the beginning that this was going to be a temporary solution. We acknowledged this was a 30 to 60 day solution, that we cannot have over 100 individuals in a quarter acre. That doesn't occur anywhere else in the community. And we know from our public health officials that there are significant challenges, public health and environmental health challenges that occur once you get past that 60-day period of time. We're now 60 days past that period of time. In November, of course, through several weeks into that process, as all the individuals had moved away from the downtown area into Camp 99, we then had several individuals who moved back to the Butterfly Lot and continue to protest in that area. And we, once again, worked in collaboration with law enforcement and successfully moved individuals back to the camp without any arrests. So 2 different times, there were individuals moved without any arrests. So there were some references to an event that happened before I was here, referred to as Whoville. And I think that's really a very different scenario there, and largely because of the amount of support of services that we've provided throughout this, as well as the alternative solutions we're now proposing for individuals, over 100 new beds for individuals to access as we transition this camp. So I want to be clear in saying that we said from day one when this camp opened in late October, this was temporary, that we needed to transition to something more accountable and structured than what we have at Camp 99. I will also say that, you know, in this process, I, along with many others at the City of Eugene and the county, spent our time, including our commissioners and other elected officials and law enforcement and other areas, our own time and sweat equity in setting this camp up. So we all understand what is there, and we've been committed to, both in terms of our professional roles and our personal commitments, to do what is right for individuals who are unhoused in our community. So it was always designated as temporary with an acknowledgement it would need to transition within 30 to 60 days. Then in early to mid-December, we announced that the camp in fact would close and transition in early January. So that was a public information that was put out, that was noticed to the campers and everyone else, that in December we notified folks that it would close and transition. And we have very transparently worked throughout this process in engaging with St. Vincent de Paul on identifying alternative, more structured, accountable beds for individuals to be. And so we have now set up 80 additional beds through St. Vincent de Paul in what is considered what is called a dawn to dawn. This is a new model, a variation of the dusk to dawn, but these are 80 beds that will be available for individuals to come and stay throughout, not only for the evenings, but throughout the day, at the same location as the existing 115 dusk to dawn beds further north on Highway 99. In addition to those 80 beds, and this is in partnership, this City of Eugene and Lane County are funding this, these additional 80 beds. In addition to that, are 25 tent sites, what's being called a micro dawn-to-dawn site. And this is to accommodate individuals who may not, we understand that there have been concerns about individuals who may not be well suited for a communal living situation. And so we identified 25 individual tent sites across the street on Highway 99 from the county property where the Lindholm Service Center is. And those 25 sites are dedicated for individuals to have their individual tents, also operated and coordinated by St. Vincent de Paul's. So we have approximately 105 additional beds that have been made available, funded collaboratively in partnership with the City of Eugene and Lane County. Those are being made available this week. And so the announcement was made today that we're going to begin to transition individuals. So certainly we are all sensitive to any time that there's change, and you know, Friday is the date of Friday, January 11th. May be news to some individuals, but I have to say that we've said from the beginning this would transition. And we said in early December, over a month ago, that in early January this was going to transition. So if Friday is absolutely problematic, and individuals of the camp and the advocates supporting them feel that there's additional time needed in order to help individuals get transferred, because that is our goal. Our goal is to make sure that every individual that wants to be served can be served. And I think our actions reflect those words in the fact that Ms. Selecki, who's here, thank you, spoke about our contract and funding support for Whitebird and the excellent work that they've done over the course of the last few weeks in expanding services, much needed services to the individuals at the camp. The fact that we've had public health, our Lane County public health staff out at the site repeatedly providing vaccinations and doing triage surveys and encouraging individuals to fill out surveys that help inform Whitebird and other social service agencies about the needs of campers. So we are Over $70,000 has been spent just in the setup and operation of Camp 99. That's not including the funding that we've made available for St. Vincent de Paul for the 80 beds and the 25 tent sites. So our goal is the same as the advocate's goal, which is to serve all of these individuals who want to be served. And so if I'm happy to work with the advocates and this sort of service providers, our team, I should say, our both City of Eugene staff team and Lane County staff team are happy to work with others to collaboratively identify what the right time frame is. I will say part of the sense of urgency is St. Vincent de Paul has made these beds available, and the longer they sit out there not being occupied or assigned to individuals from Camp 99, the more likely it is that they will get occupied by others who are in need throughout the community. We know that we have over 600 individuals each night through our point in time count that are unsheltered. So we have over around 100 individuals at the Camp 99 site, and that number has fluctuated. There's well over 1,000 people every night in Lane County that are just in the metro area that are unsheltered. So there's a great deal of need. It's not all at Camp 99, it's in many other locations. We do want to make sure that the individuals at this camp receive the services and the shelter that they need, and we're committed to working with folks to make that happen. But there is a sense of urgency, both to maintain public health and safety for the individuals at the camp and the general community, and I'm not going to go through all of the challenges because I think you've seen through news reports and other reporting we've provided the many challenges that we face and continue to face with the calls for service and issues at that camp. And that's just the result of having over 100 individuals in one location for over 2 months. So I'll end all of that just again with an eye towards collaboration, that we have successfully transitioned individuals numerous times without arresting anyone, and we've explicitly said that our goal this Friday, or if it's a few days later, is to not have any arrests be the result of that. I wasn't here for the Whoville event, but we have all been very committed to make sure that things go very differently than they sometimes have gone in the past. So I want to make a clear distinction with that. I'll end there, and thank you for the indulgence of my comments.
Okay, good. I know Commissioner Bozovic and Commissioner Burney both had questions on this, and I do too, so we'll just come down the line, and you guys want to be recognized too? Yep.
I think that answered most of my questions in that there are the 80 dawn-to-dawn beds plus the additional 25, where, you know, folks that can't handle the communal living situation might be able to be located. So there is, it sounds like there's capacity to transition the camp completely. It's just a matter of, you know, how much time that actually takes. And you know, it seems like, you know, with 3 days to be able to make that transition, I think we can get there. And if there's a couple, you know, people lagging or not able to do it by Friday, I can't imagine we're going to say, you know, here's your stuff out on the curb and we'll see you later. I can't imagine that's what's going to happen. I think there'll be a transition of these folks into those programs. So knowing that we've set up the you know, basically equal capacity transition, it's just a matter of whether it gets, you know, the execution, you know, the intent's not to have arrest or you know, boxes on the curb, you know, stuff on the curb type style eviction. So I'm satisfied with the answer.
One additional comment, Mr. Chair, I apologize, that I think is important is we've been working for several weeks now. I want to say at least give or take 2 weeks in notifying the campers at Camp 99 of the available beds through the 80 dawn-to-dawn and the 25 tents, that those would be available, and encouraging individuals to sign up on the waiting list. It was my understanding that approximately 60, and I think that number is growing, 60 individuals or more now have signed up for one of the two. So it's not new. The transition options that are these 80 beds and the 25 tent sites are not new news to the campers. We've really wanted to encourage folks to get signed up as soon as you can, because these beds are going to fill up, and we want to make sure that it accommodates as many or all of the campers that want to be accommodated at Camp 99. So we've had a few weeks of that communication that's been ongoing.
we doing this in order? Okay.
We're kind of just doing it in order of going down the row here, but we
what I
can
meant.
go in different orders. So- And you can always say, well, if someone looks like they want to, say something because they may know more or will ask, you can always say, I'd like to just pass for the now and let somebody else talk. You can always do that.
Thank you. One clarification. I was thinking about what I said, and the intent of my talking about not having a conflict is because I have already learned so much from Commissioner Buck. I will make sure that some of her concerns, in fact, are evident and articulated in this meeting dealing with these issues, if in fact she's not able to. I apologize for that. Number two, a quick check. I will say that if Commissioner Farr's point about everyone, in fact, having a place to go is met, then I support that. And finally, Steve, I would just say that it's clear that your professionalism, and your intent to touch base with everyone concerned, it's evident. I also think, sort of the way things go sometimes, if in fact we could provide that extra little 4 days that people here have requested, so that it's 7 days, even though everyone's known, even though this time frame has been established, would probably be a very strong goodwill gesture if, in fact, you can still reserve those beds with those extra 4 days.
I just wanted, excuse me, I hope I'm not coming down with a cold. I just wanted to express that in my experience working with this kind of population, it is quite often needed to have extra transition time. They are going through a lot of personal experiences, personal health issues. It takes moving quite a lot of stress, a lot of energy they may not have. So being able to extend a transition time for some that may really need it is really, really important. We don't want to make it harder than it has to be. I understand the urgency of trying to make sure that they have a bed, and that's very real. And in addition to that, a lot of people that are in this situation really find it challenging to live close in a communal setting. A lot of them really, in order to function on day-to-day level, need some space. So I really commend you on finding both different varieties of way in which they can transition from their current living space to where they'll be going. The tents are helpful. Some may need a little bit more space. So when we're talking about changes, being able to accommodate space size for certain individuals is really important as well.
Thank you. And thanks, Mr. Mokrajski, for a very comprehensive response. Very few questions remain, so I'm going to just project forward to Friday morning. And let's talk about logistically what happens Friday morning. And Mr. Chair, with your indulgence, I'll have a couple of questions directly for Mr. Mokrajski. So it's 8 o'clock Friday morning. What's going to happen?
8 o'clock Friday morning?
Yeah. Or whatever time the.
Well, what was it? What was? I believe what was planned to happen was today, this morning, there was going to be direct communication with campers to let them know about the time frame for noon on Friday, and then working both with our human services and our advocates in human services to begin, continue to triage individuals and identify. I mentioned the two St. Vincent de Paul, the 105 beds that we've made available. They're also, our goal really has been to try to get individuals into permanent, stable housing, if that's an option. That's not an option for various reasons for everybody. So working with individuals to begin, to continue that transition throughout the next several days, and that would continue through Friday. So it wasn't as though we were going to have individuals that are out there, we'll just start at 8 a.m. on Friday moving, that we would use, and we frankly have been using the last several weeks. Since we announced in December, whenever that was, I think it was around early to mid-December, that the camp would transition and close in early January. We've been working since then through various services to move people into alternative locations. So that effort will continue, and on Friday it would continue until we get to that, that period of time, and we would identify by noon on Friday if there are individuals who, for one reason or another, were not able to move or refused to move. Then, we would have conversations about how that needed to be handled.
Okay. Then I'll just paraphrase that there's more or less a soft closure. I mean, we have a deadline to move out on Friday, but we anticipate that some people will not be able to gather their belongings and find a place, an adequate place to move to by Friday evening. Consequently, the full dismantling of the camp, I'll use the word dismantling, may extend beyond the Friday deadline for certain individuals.
Yeah, well, and I would say based on the comments here today, that I'll go back to, I'm not doing all of this in a vacuum.
Right.
Understand that there's a large group of city and county staff that are thoughtfully working through day-to-day issues. We meet twice weekly in an incident command system structure. We have an incident commander, we have a logistics and planning and operations and PIOs and all of these things that are working, responding to issues that are happening on a day-to-day basis. Most of this, the commissioners, the council, and the public doesn't see, but there's a lot of work that has been going in to this for a long time. So I'll take this back to our team of folks and have the conversation about working with both the campers and the advocacy community to identify, if a few extra days is going to help us more successfully transition individuals, then we'll do our best to make that happen. I think there's also a concern, I will just say, about the liability of things happening here, that every day there are things that occur, some minor and some not so minor. The final thing, Commissioner, that I would say is that we have also said one of the things that we need to do is get individuals transitioned off this site, clean the site, and remediate the site. And one of the things that we'll do then is begin a conversation about potentially going out and doing some sort of request for proposals or interest from nonprofit organizations that would be interested in potentially operating a smaller sanctioned camping site. I think everybody, I think everyone in this room would acknowledge that over 100 individuals in a small confined space creates a lot of problems, and it's not the ideal situation. So I just want to keep, another reason that we need to move beyond and transition folks out is so that we can clean and remediate the site and then identify another option moving forward for that location.
Thank you, Ms. Mokrasi. And none of that is actually news to anybody sitting in the room. And you know that I'm at or around Camp 99 just about every single day. It is in my neighborhood, basically. And so I see the individuals, see the needs, and I see the evolution of the site. Of course, as people have lived there for a long period of time, it's become a little bit more densely crowded, a little bit more difficult for people to comfortably stay at night. But I've also been in touch on a regular basis with the people who operate the businesses immediately adjacent to Camp 99, and they have had concerns that by and large have been met, not 100% by any stretch of the imagination, but by and large have been met. And I will state that we have put some infrastructure in place that was not there before, that will remain after Camp 99 closes, including a crosswalk, which allows people to pass safely from the Dusk to Dawn program to the meal site, or the Richard Lindholm Center, where meals are prepared and served, and where Whitebird operates, and where the dental clinic operates, for instance, the veterinary facility operates. So we have left some infrastructure in place, and I'm confident, and I will remain confident until that confidence is shaken, that we are moving forward with the recommendation to find additional county properties potentially for people to stay on. And so my final question then is, back in December, I requested a discussion at the board level, received support from the board at the time, the current board, that we'll be discussing other county properties, including parks, that potentially could accommodate small, very small sites for people to move a camper, a car, or a tent to. And I'm presuming that we have that on a future agenda, is that? did we
That
have-
report will, yes, the next week.
That report is
That
on,
report will come to the board. It's scheduled for
Late
a
afternoon.
report back, sorry.
Late afternoon of next week.
Next Tuesday afternoon. The request was specifically for car camping in parks or other county facilities or private facilities. So we will have an update both from parks and from our human services staff next week.
perfect. And I'll look forward to that because as I identified in December 14th, I believe it was, that we do in some of our county parks, for instance, have year-round caretakers who are living there. So we do have some structure in place potentially that can help us to allow people to safely live or safely spend the nights. And the second part of that request then was that we have other county building and county facilities, and I believe that we're going to receive a report on the Armory, for instance, on the 22nd, is that correct?
We're down the 22nd, but the 29th, yes.
The 29th, okay.
We're down the 22nd because of Martin Luther King.
So once again, until my confidence is shaken, I'm confident that we're moving forward in the right direction, and I'm confident that come 5 o'clock on Friday, if there are conditions that exist that people simply cannot get out of Camp 99, that nobody's going to wheelbarrow them out of there. I believe that we have heard that. However, we have 80 beds in the Dawn to Dawn program, and we have 25 beds in the individual camping program, which is 115 sites, and that's roughly the number of people that have been moving in and out of the camp. And then, so one final question is, we do have some camping that is occurring directly on in parking spaces along Highway 99. This morning there were 2 cars there. There've been as many as 4 or 5 cars. A couple also in front of the old Flying Scott Drive-In. Will those sites also be vacated?
Yes, but we'll discuss with the board next week a recommendation for at least 10 additional car camping sites on county property in another location.
And we continue to hear Mr. McAllister's plea and concern that people have their living facility moved to a storage facility someplace and have no way to get that back. Looking for a safe harbor, I believe is the expression that we've been using, for if somebody's being evicted from a parking space that they're in, there's a place where and this is for future discussion, this is a part of the ongoing discussion, that they will not lose their camper based on the fact that it's been taken to a wrecking yard someplace. So that's a part of the future discussion. I think safe harbor is a term we've been using at the Shelter and Supportive Housing Committee meeting. Well, Mr. Mokarajski, you've answered my questions. Thank you very much. And Mr. Chair, thank you for your indulgence in allowing me those further questions.
Sure, and I'm going to make some comments, and then we'll go to a second round of commissioners that want to talk on this. And by the way, just the obvious, we know that each minute we take, when we multiply 1 minute times 1 commissioner, we have 5, because then there's 4 other commissioners that want to get in on it. So I'll just say, we're not going to stop the discussion, but it does mean that we will spend time on important issues, and this is really important. First wanted to ask, we've heard the word evict several times. Commissioner Farr just used it. Public comment used it. We're evicting people. I just want to, I guess, ask a legal question. We're not a landlord. We're not evicting anyone. The word evict is not really appropriate here. Is that a fair statement?
Well, I'm not your legal counsel.
Yeah. Why don't we have
Legal
Mr.
counsel is
Dingle,
sitting here, yes.
answer my legal question? We're not evicting anyone, are we?
If in fact I said evict, that was certainly not the term I meant.
Yeah. Well, no, a lot of people have used it, yeah.
No, because, Chair Sorensen and Board, the camp is not a legal camp. It's not, doesn't comply with zoning or land use law. So these people, we're not removing someone. The typical term when you use evict is someone who has previously been in a place that's lawful. This would be, the mechanism for removing individuals would be the standard trespass, which is the county's authority to control its own property. So
Yeah.
it would be an eviction.
And so what I like, what I'm hearing about this is that this is a transition, that we're closing this camp and we're moving a transition. And it sounds like it's a pretty soft transition. Could you give me examples of that? Like when we did the closure across the street, it was, we use county resources. We use county vehicles to transport people's property. Can we do that in this instance to
Yes,
make it
and that's-
easier on people?
Commissioner Farr asked this question, what are you gonna do at 8 a.m. on Friday? Well, you know, there are logistical plans in place, just as we did with the transition from individuals at the Butterfly Lot to Camp 99. We made available our waste management staff and equipment with trailers, and our staff literally loaded equipment.
Well, that was then. I'm asking
Yes, and we're
you
gonna
to
do the same thing
confirm
now.
that
So
this
what we
is
said
happening.
is, if for any individual that is moving to either the dawn to dawn, the 80 beds or the 25 tent site, we will move all of their things with them. And so that, we know that there's also a lot of stuff that's gonna remain at the site because people won't take it with them. And we will take care of all of that. So we'll make county staff available for sure. The city has been accommodating. There will be, combination of public agency staff and law enforcement officials to assist in that transition.
And if the advocates that seem to also be very respectful and very willing to work with the county, if they have questions about this, how do they communicate that? How do they, besides coming to public comment and emailing us, how can they better work with the county? Or how would you like to work with them so that they are assured that the people are being treated fairly, that there won't be any arrests, that there won't be any violence, and really treat people as fairly as we can?
We have two liaisons to the campers. One is Lieutenant Doug Mozan with the Eugene Police Department, and the other is Linda Bravo from Lane County's Human Services Division. Both Linda and Doug have done phenomenal work in working with campers and advocates and working through all of these day-to-day issues, and they will be key in this transition process. So they're certainly the front line of representation from the city and county as it relates to these matters. And, I and many others are also available to meet and discuss those issues. I need to say, we're working to provide every option and opportunity for individuals to transfer to another place to be safe and sheltered in the short term. And but it is a two-way street. So we have seen in the past where there are sometimes individuals who are not compliant or are not willing to move. And so, our hope certainly is that the vast majority or all will work in this process because we're all working towards the same thing. But the extent to which there are individuals that are not compliant, that just refuse to accept any of these alternative options that we're making available, then we'll have to cross that bridge when we get to it.
And then this really being a transition, what happens to the site that we're talking about when it becomes, not a Camp 99 and more, as I understand the arithmetic here that Commissioner Farr led us through, we actually have more opportunities at the end of this transition than we did at the beginning of it in terms of the number of places for people to go.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean,
So
you
what
just hit on a
happens?
point.
What happens to the current site, though?
The current site, as I mentioned, will be cleaned and remediated, and then we will go through, and it'll be closed so that we can go through a public process to, the reality is we've worked very closely with St. Vincent de Paul because they have been very creative and innovative in developing models to meet the needs of our unsheltered population in the community. And, but we also want to, consider other social service agencies that are out there that may have an interest and the ability to operate something that would be on a smaller scale. So this still would be temporary. At the same time, we have our eye on the horizon, which is this TAC report that you'll get presented to you on January 22nd, which says we need a permanent low barrier public shelter and we need more investment in permanent supportive housing. We'll, as Commissioner Bozovich mentioned, next Tuesday, you'll receive recommendations for investment of $1.5 million to various community-based organizations for permanent supportive housing in the community. It's really exciting that we have the opportunity to do that, and we continue the conversation looking at several different properties in the community for a low-barrier permanent public shelter. So that's the eye on the horizon, but we also recognize there's an immediate need, which is why we set up Camp 99, and now why we've made an additional 105 beds available for folks, 105 beds that didn't exist 2 months ago, or last week for that matter. So I think I'm answering your question, Commissioner, which is what happens to the site. We're going to clean it, remediate it, close it, go through a public process that will allow any social service agency that has the interest and the ability to provide on a smaller scale, potentially yet another temporary sanctioned camping location. It's also important to note, as Mr. Dingle mentioned, the camp currently is in violation of city code, right? The city of Eugene never authorized it as a rest stop or a dusk to dawn. So we're violating city code. We're just doing it with the understanding from the public agencies that this is better than the alternative, having an unsanctioned location. So there's a process we need to go through for that location to become something else.
All right, we'll have our second round. Commissioner Bernie?
I think it's wonderful to violate city code in the interests of humanity. Question: can you make it a soft close for the 11th and a hard close for the 18th?
What is the, what I will do is take it back to some of this, it depends on, I think the answer to the first part of the question is, yes, I'll make that, tentatively that commitment that we will, the 11th can be a soft close. I don't know if we can push it to the 18th, frankly, because a lot of it depends on coordination with various public agencies, including Eugene Police Department, and that requires adequate staffing from them. So, I think that we can work within a few days. What I heard the advocates say is, a week's notice would be preferred, and so I think we can work within that period of time. That if today is go time to let folks know that, we can try to work towards a week.
Well, I think that would be great. Thank you, Steve. So that to be responsive, it'll be a soft close in 3 days on Friday, and you'll work as much as pragmatic as possible to provide that extra week or whatever part of it is possible.
I think that's
and I think that's what was requested. Thank you.
Okay, any other comments on this topic? Okay, thank you. We'll go back to our adjustments to agenda. One thing I was noticing on the agenda for today was that the meeting with the legislators and the judge is scheduled for Harris Hall rather than the conference room. What was the thinking about that?
I think the thinking was not knowing how many legislators we would have, that if we had all or majority of the legislators and the commissioners and then the staff, that I can confer with Mr. Kyler, and depending on if you would like to move it,
Yeah, well, I just like to know the reasons, because, if we're in a setting where our presiding judge of the Lane County Circuit Court is sitting there behind the word
Yeah, Mr.
staff.
Chair, we're going to actually have everyone down here.
Oh, okay.
We're going to set up sort of like the city of Eugene does with their work session.
Okay, so the idea would be to have it
Yes,
in
everyone's
here,
gonna be here, yeah.
better lighting, better acoustics, and kind of a table setting.
Exactly, will be set up as.
Okay, so it's in Harris Hall, as the agenda says, but it's not in this seating configuration.
Correct.
Very good. Thank you so much for that. Another adjustment to agenda, issue is I see that tomorrow we've got this big work session on the budget, and it's set up at 8:15 for Harris Hall, not at the Goodson Center, not at the Goodson Building. Okay, and everybody but me apparently knew that, so that's all noticed and everything. Okay. And what about the setting for the room at Harris Hall tomorrow morning at 8:15? Is that the same thing, or is it more
Yes,
like this?
And we did this last year, so the same thing was done last year where we had the leadership team budget kickoff in Harris Hall. It allows us to televise whereas at the Goodson Room out at the Delta campus does not allow us to do that. This room is actually larger, so for, employees or the public that would want to attend, it accommodates that. And we would have it configured in the same way where we'll have all these tables kind of in a rectangular fashion, and the commissioners, and then we have all of our elected department heads and appointed department heads at the table, as well as budget staff.
And I appreciate that because I'm sure all the commissioners would like to kind of know what the setting is when they go into these meetings. So I really appreciate that. So let's go back to where we were on the agenda. And now we can move to emergency business. Do we have any emergency business? Nope. No. Very good. So next, let's go to the consent calendar. Now, I want to say that there's, the process we use on the consent calendar is basically things that are relatively non-controversial and need to be approved in the regular course of business, to go over items on it. Commissioners are allowed to pull items off the consent calendar. I'll say, in my view, there's kind of an unwritten rule here that you want to give notice to the people, you meaning a commissioner, you want to give notice to the people who are identified as staff, because, as of now, nobody's pulled anything except me, and that didn't involve any staff. So as a heads up, just when you're reading your agenda on Thursday or Friday, you just email the person and ask them your question, and if you are not satisfied, let them know that you would like them to come to the board meeting, and so you can ask the questions and pull it off the agenda. The only one I wanted to pull off was the item A2, which is about the establishing the roles and rules of conduct, and just to highlight that. And then the other one I was going to pull, but I'll just make some comments on, was the item from Health and Human Services, item H1, C1, that would be 6C1 in the middle of page 3 on your printed agenda. And that is a very large set of contracts that Ms. Gaffney and the Health and Human Services people are doing. It's millions of dollars to lots of different programs, and it's something that, will be approved as part of our consent calendar, and it's an important thing. Another thing is, see Mr. Dingle here. He's got several items on here. Delegation on the incident commander, emergency issue, also incorporating Oregon case law and statutory case law into our code, all really important stuff. Are there any other items commissioners want to pull before I jump into item A2? Okay, so seeing none, I'll call for a motion, and usually, Ms. Vice Chair, when I say I'll call for a motion, that means I'd like you, if you feel comfortable, making a motion. I'll call for a motion to approve the consent calendar as presented, with the exception of item 6A2.
I will make a motion to approve the consent calendar with the exception of 6A2.
Okay, is there a second? Is there a second?
Look at this. It's subtle. Second.
Thank you very much. There isn't a debate during the consent calendar motion, so unless people feel strongly about it. So all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please say no. Motion carries unanimously. All items on the consent calendar except for item 6A2 are approved. Now, let me just say that we put up on the consent calendar, the agenda team put on 6A2 as an annual thing. We've done this, I think, 3 times. We've done this 3 times to set up some rules for commissioners I don't describe them as very onerous, but we put this together after quite a bit of work 3 or 4 years ago, and we've got this process, and I'll just encourage the commissioners, and for that matter, the public, to be aware of the need for these rules of conduct. We, rarely do we have to have, sergeant at arms at our meeting, but we have had threats of violence towards the commissioners. We have had problems with large numbers of people and being sort of unruly and shutting down board meetings and things of that sort. That doesn't happen very often, but when it does happen, it'd be nice to have some rules. And that's the reason for us setting it up. And I just wanted to call it out for the benefit of the commissioners. And as with any board order, the commissioners can put up an item for discussion for a proposed agenda item to repeal, modify, or change, or get rid of any board order that we've done. So, your approval today of the, 10, 20 board orders that I'll be signing later today, those board orders are all subject to revision. They often commit us to activity that is not something that can be changed, but it is a matter of process for us as a legislative and administrative body to make those changes. So with that, I will entertain a motion to approve item 6A2, order 19-01-08-01. Ms. Vice Chair.
I make a motion to approve item 6A2, order 1901-08-02.
01.
Oh, 01, excuse me. 1901-08-01. And I also have a discussion item on that.
Okay, good. So we'll see if there is a second to the motion.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Farr. Thank you. And Commissioner Buck, a comment on the item.
I just wanted to double check that there was the clerical error was corrected in this particular
It was
motion.
corrected on Sunday and reposted correctly.
Great.
So the order posted is accurate.
Okay. Thank you, and that's a great point, that when you come across, in your reading of the items of really any item, you can always send an email to either the person assigned to it or Ms. Jones. You can always send an email saying, could you correct that clerical error or whatever. Thank you very much. Any further comment on item 6A2?
So I just want to make a quick note for the new commissioners. This was adopted as, just to provide some general guidance to the board, but particularly about how our meetings run and trying to make sure our meetings are run in a way that allows people to address the board in a fair way and not feel intimidated by being in a minority in the crowd. So there's some things in here about, not allowing signs in board meetings, because that can be intimidating to somebody that wants to speak in the minority, not allowing applause, and including silent applause because of the intimidation factor that can create to a minority opinion speaker. And we have had, and this came about after we had a board meeting off-site on a tax issue where speakers signed up and chose not to speak and actually left the meeting because they felt intimidated and felt like they were concerned about getting back to their cars. So there was a lot of reason why this was developed. And just so folks note and understand under item 6E, if meetings are getting out of hand, the chair has the ability to call for a recess. And when they do that, the board should exit the room upon the call for that recess. Unfortunately, that wasn't well understood earlier this year when we had an issue. I called for a recess and got up to leave, and the rest of the board members didn't quite get it. It took them a few minutes to clear the room. But the intent is if we get a truly unruly situation, to stop the meeting clear the room, allow the room to refill so we can try and start up in a, you know, a more organized and under decorum again. But just so you're aware, there is that ability of the chair to stop a meeting, call recess. We leave the room, you know, and hopefully the person or people have calmed down enough that we can restart our business and carry out the business of the county. But that's sort of the history of where we got to this. And I think it just kind of encapsulates and puts out for the public. We keep a copy of this at the back of the room that people can view every time they walk into a board meeting. And it's posted on our website so people understand coming into our meetings what our rules are.
Thank you very much. We've also had situations like our big public hearing in Oak Ridge where people were parading back and forth in front of the board with signs obscuring the view and attention of the audience and, for that matter, the commissioners in the meeting. And so it's best to have rules that are understandable and reasonable to run the meeting. And, you know, there are, you know, we don't have metal detectors here like the courts have. We don't have a lot of security. There have been times when we have had, you know, security at our board meetings, and we may need that in the future. I hope not, but this board order lays out a lot of that kind of thing. So, any further comments on item 6A2? Yes, Commissioner Farr.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And just one question. In light of what we see on the national scale, the things that we do as board members while we're board members, there's not a great deal of, while we're at the podium, there's not a great deal of discussion about that. For instance, emailing. Do we email? Conduct our emails. Do we tweet? Can we tweet from up here? You know, providing what is basically private conversation during a public meeting. So I don't know. There's nothing in there that regarding that. So at some point we probably should discuss that. I remember after I was elected, before I began to serve, there's a discussion regarding notes being handed to board members. That any note that was handed up here should be made public, for instance. So you know, should our emails be public? If we're doing emails while we're up here, should our tweets be notice to the rest of the board members? There's nothing in the rules about that.
Well, it's clear that any commissioner email that is not privileged is subject to public meetings law, so we don't address all aspects of what the rules are for us. I mean, we don't say in there, you have to file a notice with the Oregon Ethics Commission on April 15th. We don't really go into a lot of the things that are on us. It's really focused on the board meetings. Yeah. So you're right, but just to answer your question, in my view, your tweets or your email, as far as I'm concerned, is subject to public meeting law if it deals with a matter of county government.
So, for
Yeah,
instance,
and Mr. Dingell, fortunately, is here to make sure that what I'm saying is relatively accurate.
I just got a text message from my daughter-in-law saying, "Are you in my office?" And I said, "In your office?" And I said, "No." So,
I see that not as a government matter, but
I would tend to agree with you. However, I would give you this caveat. There have been public records requests, and judges have ordered commissioners to turn over whatever they did during the meeting, because the tie to whether it's a personal message or not, because it's conducted during a public meeting. So I certainly there's no question what you said. The first part of that is absolutely true. It doesn't matter what platform you use. You can't subvert the public records law by using your personal email or Gmail or something else. If it involves county business, it doesn't matter how it's transacted. It is a public record. Same is true for personal things. Generally speaking, there is an exemption if you use your county email to email your spouse about a grocery list. That doesn't have to be disclosed. But I did want to mention that one important caveat. There have been folks who say, this is a public meeting. What you're doing during that meeting is of interest to the public. And so it doesn't matter whether it's private or personal. So my cautionary advice would be don't be doing very personal things during the meeting because someone could make a request for all of your communication that occurred from any platform you had during the period of time of the meeting, and a judge could order you to turn that over.
And Mr. Chair, regarding tweeting, presume that that's public. So if you hit,
I don't understand how all that stuff works, but I understand it is generally public.
so
yes.
that falls into the same rules. And I think we all do emails from time to time because we get emails that pop up. So good. Mr. Chair, thank you. And I've been excited about your being the chair because of your historical context that you can apply to
Historic,
things.
yeah. I've been here forever.
Thank you.
So, thank you for that. Positive. No.
Historical monument.
Yeah, historical monument. Well, I just wanted to pull this off just because I think this is a really important thing, and thanks for those comments. I have done a little tweeting, but not much in recent years, and if anybody emails me on my personal email on county business, I just delete it. So that's the way I handle that when people try to circumvent the public email. Okay, so let's vote on that. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say no. And the motion carries 5-0. And so item 6A2 is approved. And Ms. Jones and I will make sure we get the board orders signed, maybe as early as noon.
Chair Sorensen, can I just quickly add, part of the rules of decorum, I'm going to do it now, states that when the motion passes, you will reiterate who made the motion and who made the second.
Oh, okay.
So that we have
All
it
right.
on record, because if we don't have the names actually stated with
Oh.
we don't have it on our video
Yeah,
record.
yeah, yeah.
So if you can just,
So who did make this motion?
Vice Chair Buck and
Seconded by Commissioner Farr.
seconded by Commissioner Farr.
Farr. Very good. Thank you for that clarification. And I'll try to do that. And this is another important duty of the vice chair to remind the chair to do this right. So thank you.
I didn't see you write that down.
Yeah, she didn't write it down. So,
I've seen it written down before.
yeah. So let's go back then to, we've done 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's turn the page. Let's move to item 7. Steve Dingle, our county counsel, item 7A.
All right, thank you, Chair, and members of the board. I just wanted to mention briefly, as Chair Sorensen did, there's a lot of what we consider routine things that have to be done every year, and those are the ones that you see on the first consent calendar of the year. Certainly, if you have any questions at any time about what those are, feel free to contact me, but I think the board packets are actually pretty self-explanatory. There are a lot of things that we just have to do. For example, the judge, the pro tem, so when the Justice Court judge is sick, there's somebody who's can legally sit in for that person and appear. We do a lot of this board did a lot of emergency planning and tried to, or did plan ahead for emergency circumstances. I'm a firm believer that a lot of controversy and a lot of angst is eliminated if everybody agrees to the rules ahead of time about what's going to happen as opposed to doing things on the fly. So we did that. We came up, you'll see some of these board orders, which they show up, they technically wouldn't have to be some of these renewed annually, but we put them on so the commissioners, if they feel like there needs to be a change, it can be done. So you'll see one of those talks about where previous boards agreed how they'd be notified in the event that they needed to convene an emergency meeting, as one example. The one that has been pulled off is one that the board specifically, and it was with my recommendation, would be actually off the consent calendar so that individual commissioners could easily make a change if they wanted. And this is again, a practical.
Is this the board order?
Yes, this is B.
Okay, so we'll conclude your announcements by saying we're now moving to 7B.
All right.
Okay, go for it.
Thank you, good. Anyway, so as part of that emergency process, we did discuss how in certain circumstances, usually, I think the one that actually brought it about was weather-related emergencies, or actually circumstances like what happened with this Camp 99. There are times where things need to be done and money needs to be spent, and it may involve spending money that's beyond the court administrators, or excuse me, the county administrator's actual authority to do it. So as the lawyer in me, that made me very nervous, because I would be telling the administrator it should make you very nervous, because if you're spending public money without authorization, you might have to repay it someday. So we came up with, and the board discussed, that they would create a legal avenue for the county administrator in emergency situations to spend money. And you'll see that's built into this, that there's that doesn't go on forever. At the first opportunity, they report. And I agreed thought that it should be brought up every year, so if commissioners thought that the authority needed to be removed, or if the amount of money needed to be reduced, or if there needed to be a different process, this would be the vehicle that you could do that with. So that's the only reason it's not on the consent calendar with all those other emergency measures that the chair mentioned.
Yeah, thank you so much. One thing I'll add is that there are 3 types of board meetings. So, we're in a regular board meeting now. That's where the notice goes out more than, I think it's 24 hours ahead of the meeting. Then there's a special board meeting, and is that also a 24-hour notice? The difference being we put that out typically way ahead, like a week ahead, but a special board meeting can happen where the notice is given more than 24 hours before a meeting. And then, of course, there's something called an emergency board meeting where we give 1 hour notice to the media before we have the meeting. So there's 3 types of meetings. Most of the meetings that we hold are regular meetings where the notice is given on Thursday for the following Tuesday and Wednesday. Most of our meetings are 9 o'clock Tuesdays and, if necessary, on Wednesday. Special board meetings, which we've had, maybe 3 or 4, will be where we met on, was it a Sunday morning or a Saturday morning last year? Was it a Sunday morning or Saturday morning?
We had Saturday and Sundays.
We had both Saturday and Sunday board meetings that were not regular meetings, but they were issued as special meetings, not emergency, but special. So there was more than 24 hours notice given to the news media. By the way, there is a distinction between what's required in the charter, which is that all the commissioners have to be notified of a board meeting, as opposed to the open meetings law that specifies this regular, special, and stuff. So commissioners need to be notified of meetings, not just the news media. So we'll try to keep the number of special and emergency meetings down to a minimum, but thank you, Mr. Dingell, for highlighting this emergency process until an emergency meeting can be held. Because if the cell phones are all down and the email's all down, and we're not able to get notified that there's a meeting, then there's still an emergency going on. There's still a flood. There's still an earthquake. There's still a fire going on, and the county administrator needs to be able to commit resources to attend to that emergency. So any further comments and ready for a vote? So do we have a motion to approve item or order 19-01-08-15?
I move to approve item 7B, order 19-01-08-15.
Is there a second? Second. So moved by Commissioner Buck, seconded by Commissioner Burney to approve order 19-01-08-15. Further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say no. Motion carries 5-0. Did we do that right? I think we did. Okay, thank you. So now we're moving on to, and let me just say that the Health and Human Services staff came to our holiday party, and they wanted to know why the board wasn't taking breaks, because they have been trying to get people to stretch and do breaks, and so I just will pause here to say, is everybody okay to pile through till noon? Because my hope is that we basically run these meetings from 9 to noon with some time off until 1:30, and then we start back up at 1:30, and we keep going until approximately 5 p.m. And then we do the same thing on Wednesday. So I don't want to try to do too many heroic things, like try to power through the lunch hour or stay here till, 6 o'clock to finish. I'd rather just keep us on a 9 to noon, 1:30 to 5, 9 to noon, 1:30 to 5 schedule, if at all possible. If at all possible. And I'd ask you guys to take a look at the current calendar, because Ms. Jones works really hard to keep track of all the meetings and when they're being held and on and on and on for, and so if you can't go to a board meeting, please let her know, and we will certainly work with your schedule. But right now, there's board meetings scheduled from now through December 31st, 2019. It's all on the website, and so if you can't make a meeting, please let us know, because we can either truncate that meeting to accommodate your schedule, make it shorter so you don't miss too much, or we can just cancel a meeting and just reschedule it. So we've done that a few times last year as well. I just hope we can keep that to a minimum, keep going at least 9 to 5, and other meetings as the board wants to conduct them. So, any requests to take a break? Okay, I'm not going to make that request myself. Okay, so let's go to item 8A, the rest of county administration announcements, and Mr. Mokryski.
Mr. Chair, I can hold, I had a couple things, but they're not timely, so I can hold those till next week, because I know you have a lot of business to get through here.
Okay. And let's jump into item 8B, and actually 8B and C. There's, these items, 8B and C, are an annual activity of the Lane County Board of Commissioners, and that is to appoint liaisons and representatives to various committees. I guess I'll start this off by saying basically three things. One, there are a number of boards and committees that are rather particular to the districts that we all represent. What would be an example of that? Maybe the Siuslaw Watershed District. That's a great example, Commissioner, where it's within one district, and the board could pick, somebody other than the commissioner whose district it is, but it just doesn't make any sense. So we would typically, that kind of appointment would typically go to the commissioner whose district is involved. Now, again, to use the watershed analysis, maybe the Long Tom watershed is in 2 districts. It's in the south, maybe 3, 4. It's in various districts. So I didn't get any watershed districts, so I would like at least one, and the Long Tom is in my district. Well, it's in other districts too, but then those districts have other watershed councils. And that might be true on the McKenzie that's in a couple of districts. So that's one category. Another category would be, areas of interest of the commissioners. An example of that might be that we did have the farm review, right? That's not on there anymore, is it? It was taken off. But as an example from history, the East Lane District probably has as many farms as any other district, maybe second or more than the West Lane District. So typically the East Lane Commissioner was on that. Not always, but typically. Another one would be the law library. There was a time when there were 3 lawyers on the board, and they all wanted to be on the law library committee. Well, now we're down to 1 lawyer on the board, so that's like an example. Maybe the real estate background of a commissioner would be for the Board of Property Tax Appeals. I don't know, but there are special things that people have. Specialties that they're interested in. And then last but not least are just everything else that involves us making choices. So what I wanted to do, and this is for discussion purposes only, but I wanted to say that the biggest thing I would like to do would be to rejoin the Metropolitan Policy Committee and have a Springfield rep on the MPC with me. That's the group that allocates the federal transportation dollars in the metropolitan area. That's my first one. My second one is to consider taking some of the committees that we have that are major committees. I'll just mention 4. The Finance and Audit Committee, the Policies and Procedures Committee, the Legislative Committee, and possibly, and of course I'd like to hear the perspective of all the commissioners, but especially Commissioner Farr on this last one, and that is the Audit Committee. And what I had in mind was that we would all be on these committees and that this would be part of our Wednesday board meeting, is we would have these committees in. Now, I've done a little research on this, and I mean little, but I've been told that these committees have averaged less than 10 hours a year. Less than 10 hours a year.
Not all of them. The policy and procedure is less than 10 hours, but finance and audit is more.
Yep.
The audit committee is new, relatively new. It only meets 4 times a year, but the 4 meetings equal 12 hours.
Yep.
If they're full meetings.
So I kind of took all those numbers and just sort of averaged them all and said, okay, we've got experienced commissioners, we've got new commissioners, and we've got the opportunity of having these meetings where everyone hears the stuff. And my idea was that, number one, that minimizes the conflict where we've got commissioners who have expertise that have worked on these committees for years, and yet we have new commissioners who will be assuming a greater and greater, leadership role as time goes on. And my sense is if they got the same briefings and if they learned the big ticket items, then, and again, if you hold me to my commitment that I'll try to hold these meetings on Tuesdays and Wednesdays and not, and not get outside of that regular box, that would eliminate some of our difficulty in this discussion. But I think I've talked enough, and I would like to have the commissioners, maybe by seniority this time, address it, because Commissioner Bozovich and Commissioner Farr would be able to give their overall reactions to this basic plan.
So I only have one concern about moving some of those committees into the body of the whole, and is that sometimes those committees review draft documents that can be, because they are draft, or not public documents, and give comment on those documents. Then they're finalized, then they come back to the full board, or through the committee to the full board. If it's the board and we're presented a draft document, at the time we're presented a draft document, it's a public document, whether it's ready to be public or not. So there's that issue of how do we deal with draft reports, draft documents, draft proposals, outside of, because throwing a draft proposal out as a public record and public information can lead to a lot of angst, because sometimes draft documents aren't really well thought out. And for example, the draft Parks Master Plan that was released by staff without coming to the board first at all a few years ago, that proposed getting rid of the Ocean Woods property. And we all know what happened there. So
I don't think all of us know.
yeah. Well, no, you don't know. Maybe you don't know, but it created a firestorm. And it was because a draft document was released publicly without a lot of oversight. So that's one of the reasons why we have committees and less than the quorum of the board looking at stuff, is the ability to review draft proposals without getting the public hugely upset because, an idea was brought up that might be very controversial that maybe can get reworked and brought forward without causing a lot of angst. So that's my concern about that. I'm going to kind of say something that might be a little controversial here. You know, first, 8 years ago, 2 new members of the board took their seats, not just this year. It wasn't the first time in history. And at that time, it was a change in the majority of the board. At that time, we basically took on all the committee assignments that the 3 members, partly because the minority folks didn't want to be involved in the running of the board as the minority. And in fact, for almost the whole 8 years, I think Commissioner Sorensen, the law library has been your only real liaison assignment, and the Long Tom watershed. I've been carrying a huge load of these assignments, particularly since Commissioner Stewart resigned, and we had to divvy up some of his stuff, and we had a rookie, appointed commissioner. I'm looking forward to the new majority taking on a majority of these assignments. I will ask for certain assignments based on, one, my long-term involvement in those issues and my expertise. And I hope you'll be respectful, just as we respected your wishes when you asked for the Long Tom watershed, a good majority that's actually in my district. But I was more than willing to let you serve on that because it is, one of the watershed councils, and I have the entire Siuslaw watershed district in my district. The law library, there's really no reason for me as a non-lawyer to be involved in the law library. As I look at this, my real concerns is I want to stay involved with the Public Safety Coordinating Council.
I want you to do that.
As also the co-chair of AOC's Public Safety Committee, and the fact that I spend a lot of time lobbying in Salem. In fact, I've been asked to come up on Friday and testify on a bill by Patrick Singh at AOC. So that's the thing I want to stay involved with. Of course, I'll take on the Siuslaw Watershed Council, and I think there's a Benton Lane Water Committee that deals with the that hasn't ever met, but still exists, that I don't mind being put on. And then after that, I'm pretty open to whatever you guys decide and how to divvy it up. But I think the new majority's got to think of what they want to be actively involved in and take on a lot of this. I currently serve on the Human Services Commission. I'm willing to give up that seat because I think that, but I would highly recommend that you guys leave Commissioner Farr on it and keep him involved with that because of his long-term service on that stretches back to his Eugene City Council days. There'll be a few things like that. I'm sure Commissioner Farr's got some things he'd like to be considered for, but definitively, the one place that I'm really concerned is the Public Safety Coordinating Council.
Yep.
There's some other important places because we actually have voting seats. Metro Waste is one of the places where we have a voting seat on that governing body. ELCOG, LRAPA, who gets to serve there, because they actually exercise a vote, and they don't come back to the commission every time they have to exercise that vote.
And they meet monthly.
Yeah. You may want to think about leaving me assigned to LRAPA, partly because of my scientific background, but also because I am the current chair of the board. And I think it would be disruptive to the organization to pull me. But if you guys choose not to, because there is a desire to focus on other issues environmentally by the new majority, particularly with climate change, I understand that, and am willing to not serve there if you guys choose not to have me there.
Yeah.
So the only thing I'm going to ask for publicly is the Public Safety Coordinating Council, willing to take on the assignments that are specific to my district, and beyond that, you guys have at it, and it's, you guys have the majority, and, time to pull a load of the majority. I've spent 8 years being assigned to multiple committees.
I was going to say, as far as I'm concerned, you know, your observation about the Watershed Council was exactly what I said, and I agree with that. And then on the Public Safety Coordinating Council, I just think that that's not only a good thing for you to continue doing, but I think that for the public following the board to recognize that that our district attorney, our sheriff, our parole and probation, they've been working very productively with you, and you've been working productively with them. And I don't see any policy reason to upset that. And if you want that, I think that that's very reasonable. On the HSC and El Rapa, thanks for identifying that as you know, kind of issues to be discussed further, and I do want to hear from all the commissioners. So I'll call in order of seniority, Commissioner Pat Farr.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You know, you mentioned the 5 board committees. Excuse me, I mentioned 4. There's the Legislative Committee, Rules and, let's see, Procedure and Policy, the Finance and Audit, and Performance Audit.
Yep.
3 of those, the board already has a majority of the voting on those 3 of those.
Mm-hmm.
That's not the case with the Performance Audit Committee. The Performance Audit Committee, when we set that up, was originally designed to minimize the board's impact on that committee. So the lay members, they're not lay members, they're all professionals on the board, really carry the weight of the discussion, carry the weight of the decision making. So that may be a little bit different to Finance and Audit, Rules and Policy and Procedure, and the Legislative Committee.
What about?
I think all board members participating in that is a good plan, other than, as Commissioner Bozovich stated, it could be perceived that we're making the decision prior to the regular board meeting.
Yeah. Well, let me zero in on your knowledge and awareness of the Performance Auditor Committee. Perhaps I won't say happier middle ground, but maybe a proposed middle ground is to have the Performance Auditor Committee meet with the Board of Commissioners as a joint meeting quarterly on a Wednesday, and that whoever is the chair of that committee, you or
Dennis Hidgmans, right?
Dennis Hidgmans, Mr. Hidgmans, he would conduct that meeting. It would be a joint meeting, so we would be maybe down in front with the Performance Audit Committee on a Wednesday. I'm mentioning this because Ms. Jones is the guardian of how would this actually work, but my idea would be maybe modify my idea that we would be the committee. Well, we're not the committee, they're the committee, and Dennis would run the meeting, and we would be participating in the meeting, but it would be their meeting, and we would learn more about what they're doing, and we obviously will be able to ask questions. Now, your other point, which is they're distant from the board, and they, you know, and I've argued at this very table years ago that we shouldn't have any commissioners on it. We should have them meet, make advice to us, and not be involved with their activity. So I just want to hear your view, or maybe we don't make any change, you know.
Well, and I think that's a good compromise. I thought that a voting member of the commission was not necessary on the Performance Audit Committee, and it was established as the one position was a voting member. But I think the concept where this is one of our only 3 employees whose work we are advising on. So I think your idea that the board be there as a full board of liaison, because the decision making is actually made by the I'll say lay members and non-elected members.
Right, appointed members.
Appointed members, thank you. So that would be great. And as far as the other 3 committees are concerned, I don't have an issue with each of us sitting in on, you know, for instance, the Finance and Audit. We get the reports from Moss Adams, which are wonderful, in-depth reports that historically Commissioner Lycan and I have come away with a wealth of knowledge that the balance of the board as a whole gets about this much information as they read through it. So I think that would be appropriate. Policy and Procedure has been a very inactive committee over the last 6 years. I think we've met 3 times, maybe. But that's a committee that could be invigorated potentially by the entire board's participation. So yeah, I do like that. Now, moving along to historical assign. By the way, I was assigned to all 4 of those committees. So, when Commissioner Bozovich talks about an uneven load of assignments, there certainly has been. So as far as the committees that I'm on, that I really have a strong, deep-rooted, vested interest in, are the ones surrounding poverty and homelessness. That is where I spend most of my time. That is where I spend my days. That's where when I wake up in the morning, that's what I'm thinking about. So that would involve, of course, the Poverty and Homelessness Board, the Human Services Commission, not necessarily the Housing Policy Board. Commissioner Sorensen, you have been admirably attending that, and I attend as an audience member. That's all I need for that one. But then the Mental Health Advisory Committee, it's the Mental Health Advisory Local Alcohol and Drug Planning Committee. In the past, that's not been a committee that board members wanted to join. I strongly wanted to. I requested that I replace Commissioner Lycan on that, and that's a committee I really look forward to continue to work on. There are a couple of other committees that are less vibrant. The Community Health Council, for instance, I do meet with the Community Health Council as a non-voting member of that board. So I'm a Metropolitan Wastewater Commission, appointed when Commissioner Stewart left. I love it. I've wanted to be on that since 1995. That being said, as Commissioner Bozovich said, that is a voting position that doesn't come back. It's not an advisory to the board. It is a separate board. And so I think spreading that among other commissioners is not a bad idea at all. The same thing, you mentioned the MPC. I wanted to be on MPC since 1995 also, and finally got on it. But your suggestion that it's entirely appropriate that urban commissioners are on the MPC because it really predominantly involves urban issues. The city of Coburg is on MPC also, but that's relatively small number of the miles of road are there. So Commissioner Sorensen, your request or your suggestion that you be on MPC, I love it. I'd have Thursdays free.
Yep.
And I'd probably be there.
Are they still meeting monthly?
Monthly, yeah. And they're
On
relatively
Thursdays.
long meetings on Thursdays, and it's over at the Bascom-Tyson Room or at Springfield Library. So that being said, my point is that poverty and homelessness is something that is near and dear to me, and it's something that I hope and expect to continue my work on.
Okay. In the seniority of the Board of Commissioners, Ms. Buck is the 4th in seniority.
Who knew?
Who knew? I just learned that yesterday.
I can understand Commissioner Bozovich's issues with some things that are in preliminary draft form in some of these meetings. In addition to that, we've got a lot of boards. And I also want to dedicate a lot of my time in my district. So I want to be able to make sure that there's space for that in my schedule. In the proposal that you make, of course, that adds more boards to whoever's schedule is already pretty full. I know I have a lot of watershed boards that happen to be in my district, and I am interested in the LCOG board, the transportation board, and finance and audit. I am open to being on the housing policy board. I do know that quite well, so if somebody else wants an opportunity, that's perfectly okay with me. But I'm a little cautious on adding these other boards to the body collectively, just given time to be in my district is quite large, and I want to be out there.
Hey, I heard LCOG, the Rural Transportation Committee, Finance and Audit, watershed councils, anything that you do not particularly want, or that you do particularly want?
Well, those are the main ones that that jumped out at me. And, you know, there's two lists here going on, the representative and the liaison list. And I'm not sure if we're making decisions today.
No, we're not. We're merely discussing it because I'm hoping to come up with a written proposal that people will look at the next meeting based on what you're telling me.
Sure. There are some specific boards that meet at 7:30 in the morning, and as a mom trying to get her kid off to school at that time, those will be very challenging for me. And would like to give that opportunity to somebody else. One of those, I think, is the Fair Board. And the other one, yeah, the wastewater management committee. Those ones, I'm happy to make available or let other people give some interest to.
Okay? Okay. Anything further?
Well, as the least senior member of this board,
That was me for a long time.
I'm following in good footsteps.
I was the least senior board member,
When was that?
1997.
I'm sorry. This is very, first off,
Flintstone was senior then, by the way.
First off, I forgive my naivete, but honestly, after having a lot of time to immerse myself and meet each of you, I didn't see this as that polarized of a board. So we're talking about this side and that side. I don't know what side I'm on. I, like Commissioner Farr, have a track record and a background in poverty and homelessness. And concurrently, I absolutely support him being the commissioner on that board because I want to defer to you and I do recognize your passions. I also have a strong interest and have a couple of kids involved in public safety. But concurrently, I want to let you know, Jay, I recognize what you stated and I would support that. Not that the chair needs that, but I would support that also in the spirit of all us working together. For me, I would accept what you said, Mr. Chair, because I really don't know all of the authority, et cetera, of the Metropolitan Board you discussed, but it sounds to me from hearing other commissioners that that makes sense. I have an interest which I don't think conflicts with anything I've heard so far in the following boards. Lane Workforce Partnership Board. I would like to say that I've owned a training company. I was the founding executive director of the Lane Regional Workforce Quality Committee, and I would very much hope to add value on behalf of this commission to that group. But I notice you're on there, so but I would have that interest. I would want to ask.
And just so that Ms. Jones is trying to follow all this, I'll just say that I've enjoyed being on that executive council a number of years, and it's a really great organization, and I would hate to give it up, but I will give it up, so it's not that I'm hating to give it up and won't give it up, it's him. I want to give it up because I think that you have the passion for it, and I think we should, you know, get some energy there, and I appreciate your willingness to be on it.
That's kind of you. Commissioner Farr, I have an interest in regional solutions, but I don't know. I've talked to Jackie Mikkelsen. I've known her for 25 years. Is that a group that you want to stay on? Is that a group that is, if I may?
General response is I don't want to be taken off of any of the committees I'm on. Okay. However, that being said, I was appointed to Regional Solutions after Commissioner Stewart left his position. Relatively short time, only a couple of meetings, highly interested in the work that they do. However, it seems fitting that you would, if you have a great interest in that, and since you have some experience there, not some.
I just don't want to, okay, thank you. So anyway, long-winded, but thank you very much, I had to ask. Regional Solutions, what else? I wrote all these down. I'm also interested, if appropriate, as is Ms. Buck, I would only want to do it unless she were on. I wouldn't want to take that spot from her, of the Lane Council of Governments, LCOG.
Do they meet in the morning, or they meet in the evening, don't they? Okay.
And we had two names on here previously, so I'm unsure.
It was an alternate.
Alternate.
Oh, okay, great.
A lot of these that have two, sometimes it's the main designation and alternate.
Right.
Some of the committees actually have two board members, so that's not clear.
I wasn't-
So
I
if you have a
didn't know.
question about that, I can probably tell you which ones are that way.
And I would, on the LCOG, I would just add that traditionally, we have had the East Lane Commissioner on the LCOG because the East Lane District has the most member governments of LCOG. So Springfield has Willamette Lane, and the city of Springfield, and the Springfield School District, I believe. But the number of governments in the East Lane District is, multiples of that. And so it tends to be more of a coordination function, and that's why typically it's East Lane. But
Okay.
it doesn't have to be.
No. I would request to be an alternate to that then. And Travel Lane County. Again, Commissioner Farr is on that. If you notice, there's a common thread to all of these things that I've requested, and that thread is economic development, which I know a little bit about. So again, Commissioner Farr, I would defer to you. It's of interest to me, but, yeah.
And of course, economic development is a major area that I've worked on since my early days in business in Lane County. However, Travel Lane County has been difficult for me because the meetings conflict directly with other meetings that I go to. So I love Travel Lane County. The work is fantastic, but Commissioner Burney, I would defer to you on that.
Well, that's kind
And that's hard for me to say.
Oh, well, I'm not pushing it. Okay, well, thank you, sir.
Take it.
And that's really it. Because
Okay.
we're not looking at liaison positions now, correct? We're looking at,
I was opening it to everything, but I think that people have been
well, I'd
pretty
only make,
focused on the other, but I'd like to hear your views on the liaison too.
do I have any views? Yeah. Parks Advisory, Public Health Advisory. Well, Mackenzie Watershed Council, unless, again, it seems like that would be appropriate for me to be one of the commissioners on that. That's really it.
How many commissioners are on Mackenzie Watershed Council? 2 or 1?
1.
How many other watershed councils are in your district besides that one?
Two, at least three.
Ghost Fork.
Well, maybe, unless you have a strong view on it, that would be an example like the Long Tom watershed, where I don't have any others but Long Tom. So, does that sound reasonable to you? Yeah. Okay. Any other comments before we go on a
Yeah, did
second
anyone-
round?
Did anyone address Commissioner Bozovic's discussion of drafts being a reason not to do what you said?
Yeah, I think I should respond to that. Well, first of all of the meetings of the committees are subject to the open meetings laws and open records laws. So that if a staff person wants to talk about a draft report and they give it to the commissioners, then that becomes a public record. If they talk about it, then the talking about it is public, but what they've written stays draft unless they give it to the commissioners. So in my view, there's no difference legally between the committee meeting, whether we say we're going to have a meeting of the committee and we're all on the committee, or we say that we want the staff to come in and brief the board and get rid of the committee and subsume the committee. Either way, it's still a public meeting. And so I would say, yes, in a meeting room in the courthouse without any TV cameras and without then the staff might feel more free to discuss it. But I'm also trying to get the openness that comes with a discussion. Now, if staff, and I'm sure staff will, and legal counsel will help them, they'll minimize release of information that is something we should not get because it becomes public. So, and I think that, now, Ms. Jones, do we have enough information based on what the 5 commissioners have said to make a proposal together?
No.
No, what area, well, okay, hey, you know, I told you guys I'd keep you here till noon, so,
Courthouse to get.
what are the problem areas that have not been, resolved?
I'm going to defer to Steve for a moment. before
Mr.
Okay.
Is it okay,
Yeah,
just a
go ahead.
clarification
Yeah,
around
sure.
the committee? A couple points of clarification as you're considering sort of changes. The committees here, and they're identified in the list that you have in your packet, they say either mandated, special, and non-mandated. The mandated committees are mandated by state law. All of our county committees are authorized in Lane Manual, Chapter 3. And then each of these committees have their own bylaws that specify the number of commissioner representatives. So as you consider changes there, if you want all the commissioners or more or fewer, any of that, they're likely additional changes you'd have to make either to the manual and certainly the bylaws for each committee if you were going to change any of the composition. So just so you know that.
I mean, obviously, that's why we're having this discussion, is that if we involve our other department heads that are often on these committees, it would be my view that we would bring them in for that discussion. So it's my view would be if there's a requirement in the current Lane Manual for the assessor to come into finance and audit, and a member of finance and audit, or the district attorney, a member of policies and procedures, or some other elected official, that we would have them in the meeting, because we would be meeting as that committee. And to me, it might even be good to show the public that, you know, that person, the assessor or the district attorney, is going to be in the role of where I'm sitting. They're going to chair that component of the meeting, and the commissioners are going to attend, and there's going to be a meeting, and staff will present, and if they make recommendations, then they make recommendations, and then that'll be taken up by the full board. So I want to minimize the number of conflicts, but I also want to get across the idea that most of these committees, on average, when pulled together, are meeting less than 1 day a year. So that means out of the 48 weeks that we normally have on a Wednesday, we can easily accommodate all of that work without it going on to a Thursday or a Monday. And I'm trying to help the commissioners put their work on those Tuesdays and Wednesdays. And another thing I would mention, and this is more for the board, is these liaison positions are liaison positions. When I write these committees, when I'm appointed to these committees, I write them and say, hey, I'm your liaison. I am not your babysitter. I am not your phone pal. I'm not your pen pal. I'm your liaison. And so if you need something from me, and you need something from the Board of Commissioners that you otherwise couldn't get through the normal course of things, I'm your liaison. Sometimes I've really jumped in, you know, but normally I don't. And I'll just say, it's up to the person that's the liaison on how they handle it. And that's why at times I've taken, and not recently, I'll admit that, at times I've taken on lots of liaison positions, because it's easier when you view your liaison role more narrowly. Because I do what Commissioner Buck has just said. I spend my time on my district's problems, my constituents. And so the liaison function falls off in terms of my daily activity. Yep.
I just kind of also, I also wanted to reiterate that about 2 years ago, you guys reapproved Lane Manual Chapter 3, which actually went into full detail on all of these committees. They're all outlined in the committees, how many representatives sit on it, how many liaisons. Many of them in the bylaws also have date and time of meeting. So, and per your Chapter 3, in order to change any of those, it does require bylaw changes that have to be brought back to the board by board order. So we can discuss these, but right now we're bound by what's in Lane Manual for when these meetings take place and who is on the meeting committees. And yes, it's easy to bring back a board order, but we would need to do that to change those.
I
And that
agree.
was- So
I appreciate your attention to that. And my idea on the assignments to these three committees is not to change the membership. It's not to change the membership. It is to have the meeting, well, I guess it is to change the membership in the sense that all 5 commissioners would be members. So in that sense, I'm changing. The other thing I'm changing is the time and place of the meeting.
Which is
so that
in
we-
bylaws.
Yeah, which is a bylaw and which is something that we would have to change by board order.
And I would need clarification if we're going to have the board be present at these meetings, what our quorum becomes on those boards.
Well, all board meetings are obviously, 3 commissioners.
Right, so we're calling them board meetings now as opposed
Yes,
to the committee
correct.
meetings. So,
I would call them joint meetings. I would call them a joint meeting of the committee and the board.
right, I'm just, my concern as the board coordinator is quorums.
Right.
So when I lose a quorum, for whatever reason, I need to know the number of voting members and quorum numbers.
Right.
And that's going to be different for every committee meeting.
That's true.
So that becomes a bit of a challenge at times, and as you know.
Are you saying that it's a challenge currently because people haven't been coming to the meetings of the committees?
Well,
And
so
therefore,
currently-
you have to worry about what the quorum is of the committee?
Currently, I manage the Board of County Commissioners.
Mm-hmm.
As you see, there are many other committees that are managed by staff liaisons.
Mm-hmm.
They manage those quorums. They manage whether that meeting should meet or not. If we make them Board of Commissioner meetings, I manage those quorums,
Mm-hmm.
which puts me responsible for noticing 45 more meetings.
Well, not
And-
really, because
and knowing-
I envision having them being as part of our agenda process.
Right, but it, for your board, it's a 5-person quorum, right? But we could have another board like, and some of them we can't even do because they're not ours. They're multi-jurisdictional committees, so we can't change those.
I'm not proposing
But-
changing any of those.
Yeah, but other ones, let's just talk performance audit. They have a certain number of members that are voting members, so I'm going to need to be aware of how, I need to know who's coming. In the case of a board meeting, I know that the 5 of you are here because I have a Tuesday and Wednesday meeting set for you, and you tell me when you're not going to be here, and if I'm at risk of losing a quorum, the meeting's canceled or changed. I don't have lists of all of the people that make up the quorum of all of these committees. That's up to staff liaisons. Sometimes people don't show up and quorums are gone. So I'm bringing up the challenges of putting a full board onto all of these meetings. I'm not advocating one way or another. I'm just making sure we address the issues that could come up if we try to make these full board meetings.
Yeah. I certainly appreciate all that caution. I think I'd rather defer to Commissioner Farr on the way we would incorporate the audit committee. I just would say a joint meeting with the audit committee quarterly on a Wednesday doesn't seem like a big change, other than the commissioners are going to be more engaged in what they do. I mean, what do you think of that just to separate that one out from the internal committees?
I would want to talk to the committee about that,
Okay.
most certainly, because they have a great deal of input as to how that committee works, as well it should be. And the more we can allow them to operate completely independently of the board, the more open the deliberation can be. So that would be my concern, is if we have the board in the same room while they're performing the deliberations, did they all of a sudden, in some way, perform for the board that's sitting in front of them?
Right.
As opposed to deliberating among themselves.
It's
which
a
is
very
bizarre.
legitimate concern, one I personally share. So maybe the best thing to do to make things a little easier going through this is let's just make no change at all on performance and, on the Performance Auditor Committee, but with a understanding that in a month, we will hear back from the committee and you can report back on any change and we can ask you what the scoop is.
At that point, I would send the message to Chair Hitchmans and
Yeah.
to Casey, Dr. Creer,
Yeah.
and have them arrange for the discussion that occurs at the board.
Okay, very good. So that way we at least deal with one of the, 100?
Actually, if you could give me clarifications on which committees you're thinking you would like to be full board? committees, that would be
My
extremely
idea is to not make any change at this time
Okay.
regarding the Performance Audit Advisory Committee. That Commissioner Farr will remain the liaison to that committee and/or member of that committee if he's, are you a member?
member, yeah.
You're a member. So he'll be the member of the committee representing the board. And two caveats to that. One is that he'll talk with the committee about whether or not they want to come in more often. And secondly, he'll report back on that topic. How's that?
Good.
Okay. Now, that doesn't solve all of our problems, but the other one that you asked me about, Ms. Jones, was what committees do I envision that we would kind of have the full board meeting with the current committee? And first of all, we'd meet with them on Wednesdays. And secondly, we wouldn't change their rules other than they would be meeting jointly with the Board of Commissioners. So if we had to change the time and place of their meeting to coincide with our meeting schedule, so it'd be on a Wednesday, we would have to do that. But those three committees are Legislative Affairs, Policy and Procedures, and Finance and Audit.
And facilities is the other board committee.
So you're
And
talking.
facilities,
You're
thank
talking
you.
just the standing committees then?
There's four of them.
Right.
Commissioner Bozovich just reminded me there's a fourth committee, and that's the Facilities Committee.
So, and yeah, by definition, those are outlined in Lane Manual as all our standing committees. That's much easier.
Yeah, okay, and then you've got the matter of the watershed councils of all the watersheds that are in Commissioner Buck's district will be Commissioner Buck, with the exception of McKenzie. All the watersheds that are in Commissioner Bozovich's district will be his, but the one that overlaps several districts, namely Long Tom, will be my liaison.
So if we could go down each committee and actually just verbally outline what we're going to do for each one.
Okay.
So if we started with the Lane County Board of Representatives, for Poverty and Homeless Board for 2019,
Okay, so
Want to
you're,
do with that sheet, or you want to start with the shorter?
whichever one you want to start with.
I'm just looking on Commissioner Bernie's very well thought out, printed out versions of these, so excuse me for assisting you. So the first one is Benton Lane, or not?
I think you must have
Let's
a-
get the sequence down of which ones we're going through.
I'd like to, whatever one you want to start, if we can just start with
Yeah,
the very
he's
first
got,
committee.
yeah, he
I
does.
will get them in the right order.
Why don't you
for
put them in the right order, and I'll may look on the computer too.
Well, under the first agenda item, the first committee is the Community Health Council.
So we can go down the list of liaisons, and the first,
Community Health Council?
yes, Community Health Council,
Start to go down the list.
yes.
Okay, so currently that is Commissioner Farr, and I'll just say, is that the way you would like it? Sure. Is there any change that anyone wants to say in light of everything? So this goes at the bottom. Yeah. Is there anyone who wants to be considered further for that? And we will put Commissioner Farr in the box, and if anybody else wants to be put in the box with a question mark, I'd like to hear that. Okay? So we won't have any question mark, we'll just put that in. Farm Review Board, we got rid of that. Mental Health Advisory, Commissioner Farr, you're currently in that box. Do you want to continue with it?
Yes, I do.
Yes. And does anyone want to be considered further for that? Okay, very good. Board of Property Tax Appeals, I actually did that several times, and it is something where there's a lot of interest on the part of real estate, I'll just tell you that. Okay, so we have to change the name in that box.
We do.
We do. And is there any takers for that? And I get your theme here. All right, I'll be happy to do that, so put me down for that. Fair Board, Commissioner Williams, we're gonna have to put somebody else in that position. Any takers for the Fair Board?
I have been attending occasionally.
Would you like to be the board's representative to the Fair Board?
And I'll look around the board. I enjoy the Fair Board. It's,
Okay,
that's a fun group.
let's go with that. We'll go with Commissioner Farr on Fair Board. I would put Commissioner Sorensen as a question mark on that.
On the Fair Board?
Yeah, it may be that you know, that I'm going to be getting too many, and so I'll take my question mark off, or it may be that there's some policy issues out there, I don't really know, but that's one. Okay, Lane County Planning Commission, that's a pretty significant
I
appointment.
would like to give that one up.
Okay,
I think it should be the rural commissioner, because that's where the planning commission deals with rural land use. But I perceive there'll be a change in land use policy on this board, and I don't represent that change.
I would agree with you that we have rarely had a urban
You don't
commissioner.
have to attend all the meetings. I generally attend only you shouldn't attend some of the meetings that are going to come before the board, you know, where they're hearing something and they're going to make a recommendation to the board, because that might give you opportunity for ex parte contact. But they have work sessions around work plan, and also their report back to the board and training and stuff that I have attended. So it's not a lot of work, but I don't feel it's proper for me to continue in that role.
I would just say I agree that the Planning Commission deals almost entirely with rural issues, and that we've often had either West Lane or East Lane commissioners on it. In my view, there's probably second only to transportation would be planning as being the thing that's going to knock on your door, the most common. So I would probably agree with Jay on this, and we should put Commissioner Buck's name on as the liaison to Planning Commission, and she will also, and one thing that you can do is talk to our acting LMD person about when you do want to come, to be placed on the agenda early in the meeting for a time certain, so you can get your comments of what they're doing in and then leave. Also, I want to highlight what Commissioner Bozievich said about the fact that you should not be in the Planning Commission meetings when they're hearing items that are matters of a, where the evidence being taken by them will be considered in making a decision that you're not going to be making as a Planning Commission member. You're a liaison, you're not a member of the committee. So it's, I think, a good one for you. Also, you'll be more in touch with the LMD, and you will get a lot of questions about LMD anyway. So I just think we should put your name on that one. Animal Services, I've been on that before. If other commissioners want to be considered for that, I would let them. If not, I would be comfortable.
Uncontroversial.
Yeah, it really has not been doing much.
But it isn't anymore.
Yeah.
Countywide dog licensing is a big question mark now.
Okay.
How to increase dog licensing to increase revenue,
Yeah, exactly.
and there's a potential of facilities need there.
Yeah, exactly. Does anyone else want to be considered for that? As a question mark? Okay. All right, let's move on.
I'm leaving Animal Services as a, or,
Sorensen.
You're putting me down as that.
okay,
Okay.
sorry, I just heard the
And
question mark.
then we have the law library. That's going to be me unless there's a strong view. Okay, Parks Advisory. This is really important.
If you need someone.
Well, I would say
got an
that
economic
it is
activity
often had an economic
Yeah.
development
That's fine.
component. It is also not always the Springfield commissioner, but, you know, a lot of the controversies tend to be there.
Happy to serve.
Okay.
Their large workload just ended. Well, the big
They
list.
just finished
Oh, I'm
a
familiar with
major.
it. Actually, I read that when you all were looking at that.
Yep, good. Okay, Public Health Advisory Committee, that is, it's a, I believe it's a liaison function. Commissioner
It's a
Farr,
representative, oh, yeah, this is a liaison.
liaison function. There's another one that's mandated,
Right.
but this one's a liaison.
Right.
Any views on the commissioners? Okay,
Keep that as Pat.
okay. Transportation Advisory Committee, formerly RAC. I think Heather was on for that because of its dominantly rural.
Usually whoever's on the Lane Act is also represents to the TAC, liaisons to the TAC.
Okay, Coast Fork, that's Buck. East Willamette Resource, that is Buck. Longtime Watershed Council, me. Mackenzie Water Council would be Commissioner Burney. Middle Fork Watershed Council, Buck. Sayslaw Watershed Council, Bozovich. And that, I think, concludes the liaison list as we currently have it.
Did you want to be left on as a question mark on Fair Board?
Yes, I mean, just at this stage, yeah.
Okay.
Don't mind my handwriting.
No, I don't mind it. And so, and just thanks for printing this out. I don't know why my computer didn't work.
Well, mine got disconnected right in the middle of the meeting.
Yours got disconnected, yeah. So next, let's go over the mandated committees, the representative committees. We have poverty and homeless. We currently have Farr in the box. Does anyone want to have their name listed as a question mark?
I had Farr and Bernie both as question marks on that one.
Okay. Performance Audit Committee, we're going to not make any changes to that, but we are going to discuss making a joint meeting of some sort, but we're going to hear back from the committee first, and Commissioner Farr will be there. Does anyone want to be listed as a question mark on the Performance Audit Committee? Okay, no. Public Safety Coordinating Council, I think we've all agreed Commissioner Bozovich will be our rep on that. Housing Policy Board, I wanted to suggest that Commissioner Burney be appointed in my place. I want to try to get Springfield back into the family.
For the record, Springfield dropped off of that board, Commissioner Burney, 2 years ago, I believe, is when they quit funding that board.
Yep.
And therefore ceased representation.
Yeah, so Commissioner Lyken was on that, and he asked if I would take it over because Springfield wasn't going to participate. And I guess my idea is, well, if we could get Commissioner Burney to play a role in that, we might be able to get Springfield to reconsider that.
You'll most often see me in the audience at those meetings.
Okay.
Thank you.
And we have not really gotten to the idea of a backup on these things. What if we wanted to do that? Could we do that, or would we have to have a lane manual change to have a backup?
I mean, you can do it. It would require bylaw and lane. We have taken bylaws out of lane manual for that very reason, so we don't have to update lane manual every time, but bylaws are changed by board order.
Yeah. Okay, do you think that, because it's a multi-jurisdictional committee, I guess we'd have to ask them as to whether or not we can have a backup?
Yes, that's correct. On multi-jurisdictionals, where we just have a seat on them, that we don't define the bylaws and,
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so let's list Commissioner Burney and is that okay, or Commissioner Farr, do you want to be listed as well? We can still talk about this next week. We don't have to decide this
Just
today.
with a question mark there.
Okay, so
I'd serve as the alternate.
we're talking about the Housing Policy Board.
Pat is your alternate.
Okay. See, we're going to have to discuss this again next week when we see all this, pulled together.
I will bring it back in order form next week with the names listed and question marks. And
Yeah,
we
yeah,
can
we'll
discuss
just have it as a proposed board order.
Yeah, and you can, and if we can get it cleaned up, you can actually take a vote on it, and I can
Yes.
update the order
Correct,
based on the vote.
correct. So, yeah, but we're not going to have it on the consent calendar.
No.
It's going to be yeah, fully discussed. Okay, so HSC, the Human Services Commission, we have 2 seats on that board. Typically, we would have a rural and an urban member of the HSC. We don't have to do it that way, but we have done it that way at times. I didn't hear, you're on it and you would prefer to stay on it. You're on it, you would be okay with leaving if another commissioner wanted to.
And historically, we've had, until Commissioner Bozovich stepped onto the board, it had been a commissioner and a budget committee member. But it's.
Yeah, we did make that change a few years ago. Okay, so I'll put Commissioner Farr, and which of you want to participate in that, either Commissioner Buck or Commissioner Bernie?
I just want clarity, Commissioner Bozovich, you did want to stay on it? or-
No,
No, he said no.
Okay.
I'm offering to,
Yep.
because
So
I think both of you have talked a lot
HSC
about
is,
human
it's a
services.
mandated jurisdictional committee. What does that mean? It means Eugene, Springfield, and Lane County have entered into a multi-jurisdictional agreement. And they have signed an agreement saying they're going to form a commission to make sure that human services are addressed by the member jurisdictions, Lane County, City of Springfield, City of Eugene.
Important to note, it's advisory to the Board of Commissioners, though. It advises us, not the other bodies.
Yeah, it the multi-jurisdictional committee advises us, and the money is run through Lane County.
If Commissioner Buck if that is not of interest, you tell me, Heather.
I'm
I'll be happy
open
to.
either way as
I'm-
well.
I'm open either way as
The only thing I would probably make note of is we allocate a lot of money to nonprofits, including St. Vincent de Paul, through those programs. So it may be better for Commissioner Bernie to be there, so he doesn't, because
That makes
they do make a recommendation on a budget, their annual budget to the board.
Yep.
And that annual budget includes a fair allocation of St. Vincent de Paul.
And in the years that I was on it, before Commissioner Bozovich was on it, I would say that a lot of the discussion is allocating money to nonprofits. So that could be,
I would be delighted to serve with Commissioner Farr on that committee.
okay.
Excellent.
Lane Area Commission, that was the one that Commissioner Bozovich is on, and
I'm an
that's,
alternate,
you're an alternate, and Commissioner Lycan was the,
yeah.
okay. Would you like to continue as an alternate with Commissioner Buck
Sure.
on that?
I'll be listed as.
Okay, so you'll, Commissioner Buck will be the member. It's dominantly an East Lane thing, or at least rural Lane County thing.
My workload is.
Okay, turning the page, Lane Workforce, it's listed for me. Put Ms. Jones, Mr. Commissioner Bernie. Metropolitan Wastewater, Commissioner Farr, you're on that. And what was the status of Commissioner Williams? Was he a member of it too?
He's alternate,
He was the alternate.
and I attend all meetings.
Okay, and I think, Commissioner Bozovich, did you mention you were not interested, or how would you?
If you're looking for an alternate, I have served on it, and because of my engineering background, I have an understanding of what they do. But the jurisdiction is administered by the city of Springfield and run by the city of Eugene, or vice versa.
The money is handled by Springfield, and the operation is Eugene. Yeah.
So, and it's dealing with basically the metro plan areas wastewater.
Wastewater.
So, my jurisdiction only touches the Santa Clara area of that.
Yep.
So, yes, I have some expertise there, but jurisdictionally, I really don't have a lot of.
And mine is fully in it.
Yeah.
And there are facilities in your district, which are the
The tree farms in my district.
Right.
Yeah.
Tree farm is in the
But the
Westland
actual
district.
treatment plants in North Eugene's district,
A lot of the waste comes from my district.
and Springfield.
Yep.
Down.
Yep.
And the ratepayers are almost entirely in the 3 urban districts, so.
Yes, so it is a Eugene Springfield wastewater management commission. What about having Commissioner Burney and Commissioner Farr on it?
With Commissioner Burney as the alternate.
Yeah, yeah, okay.
It really is, it's immensely interesting.
They come in,
I've been over there.
they come in annually for us to approve a component of their budget, and we do not provide any funding to them that I'm aware of.
No, we don't.
Yep.
Other than ratepayer.
Their
We approve their rates.
I'm gonna be hitching with you.
All right.
Okay.
Okay, so Regional Solutions, we'll keep FAR in the box. We'll put a question mark for Commissioner Burney.
For regional solutions?
Regional Solutions. For Association of O&C Counties,
That's
Well-
actually, we'd made that decision in December.
yeah, that decision is made in December of each year.
No, it's not.
This time it was made in December.
Oh, this time.
Actually,
Because we had-
Alex reviewed the bylaws again. There's a asterisk on there discussing that we actually need both still.
Okay,
Oh, okay, so we need to reappoint.
We will also do it again in November, as we just did, but we'll have 2 recurring items now in November as well.
so if you're saying that our December action, which we were told at the time, would be because the AOC wants, the Association of O&C Counties wants us to designate by the end of the year who would be the commissioner for the following year. You're saying now that is not accurate, and now
So-
today, in January of 2019, according to the Association of O&C Counties, we've got to approve someone in January.
There are 2 different items.
Okay?
So,
One's
Mr.
to be
Kyler,
Board member, and one's about designating.
right, Mr. Kyler went through and reviewed the bylaws further, and I've put his comments down there.
Okay.
So we actually do still need an Association of O&C County voting delegate, and 1 seat carries 3 votes. And we also still need in November to appoint a voting delegate in the matter of appointing a board member to the Association of Oregon and California Land Grant Counties for the following year. It has to be done in November because we need to tell them before January.
So the voting delegates to the Association of O&C Counties, that should be done in 2019.
It should
now.
be done right now, yes.
And secondly, later in the year, the Board of Directors of the Association of O&C Counties, the association is asking that we do what we just did in November and appoint a board member to the Association of O&C Counties Board.
Correct.
Okay, all right.
And that, I will automatically bring that back to you in November, as it'll be just like we did in November. It'll be a routine order where you just decide.
One of the things that I'm going to suggest is that we not make these appointments, that we not make an appointment to the Association of O&C Counties voting delegate, and that we not make in November an appointment to the Board of Directors of the Association of O&C Counties. And that has to do with, and I'm only speaking for myself, I'm not speaking for any other commissioner, but I don't want Lane County to be a member of this association. And obviously, it's not my decision solely as to whether we do that or not, but it would be my preference that in next week's board order, that you think about putting either nothing in that box so that we're not appointing, or that if a commissioner who does want us to maintain it and does want to serve on it, that they can add their name to it. Okay, is there anyone that wants to add their name to it?
Well, as I've been appointed as the board member in our last vote,
Correct.
I would appreciate being able to carry the 3 votes with that. And I believe that the association is important for us to stay a member of as Senator Wyden and Crapo are drafting massive legislation that's going to deal with these lands. And that is our place and voice for helping craft that legislation.
Okay.
And we're either at the table or not at the table.
Well, for purposes of this meeting and this decision, let's put Commissioner Bozovich with a question mark on that. Let's then recognize that between now, because we're not making decisions now, that we will, have the view expressed that we should get out of this association and not appoint these people. And I fully recognize there'll be commissioners that don't agree with me, and they'll have an opportunity to debate that. I would note that the association, that 2 of the counties have withdrawn from the association, and so we wouldn't be doing anything. Multnomah County, withdrew over the litigation against the National Monument in Southern Oregon, and so it'll be up to the board as to whether we continue our involvement with, and that'll be both budgetary as well as being appointing a voting delegate. So are we?
So my
yeah,
question for
yeah.
you, given your voicing that you'd like this off, would you like this item to come back on a separate board order where you can actually have a discussion
Oh, I
about
see.
this
So that
committee?
we're approving the less controversial
Right, because you'll be
component.
holding up,
Yeah,
we
yeah,
can't.
okay. Yeah, I think that's good, just to have 2 board orders, or now, what are we up to, 3 board orders? So that way we can have an up or down vote on that. Okay. Thank you for that clarification. So we'll be voting on that. Anything further on this?
Yeah, so is this not the right time to ask questions about that?
I would say that Ms. Jones did an excellent piece of guidance here by pointing out that all these other committees and all these other decisions are going to be relatively non-controversial. We might as well put that on the agenda, and then when we have the O&C thing, next week, we can discuss that, and everybody will get their oar in the water.
Got it.
Okay, thank you. Okay, are we now ready to go Benton Lane Water Supply? Is that the next one? Okay, we'll put Commissioner Bozovich on that. Cascade Pacific Resource Conservation District, that has been handled by, it's an economic development effort. Commissioner Likens in the box. I'll just say Commissioner Burney unless. That is the Cascade Pacific Resource Conservation and Development District. It's funded by USDA, or at least it has been historically funded by USDA. It's a regional economic development organization. City of Florence Urban Renewal Agency, that will go to Commissioner Bozovich. Forest Management Subcommittee, that is actually appointed by the AOC, isn't it?
Actually, we have to appoint me or somebody to be that. I've been sitting on it, going to the meetings.
Okay.
because
Would you like
Mike
to,
was leaving,
right,
but-
would you like to have your name in that box for
Yes, that's
purposes?
one I would.
Okay. Commissioner Buck, this is a really important committee to your district. I guess I would say that, since Commissioner Bozovich wants to be on it, we should probably have him, but I just wanted to, again, give you the option of having your name listed if you wanted to.
Yeah, I'm very interested in are we talking about ALCOG?
No, we're talking
forest
about
management?
forest
Oh, I'm
management.
sorry, we're not there.
And it's an AOC thing. It meets in Salem. It's time consuming.
It's a 7:30 meeting.
Then he should
Yeah.
work on that.
Okay, very good. And by the way, I do,
Salem.
yeah, I do think that the AOC is a really important organization for us to support. I have not had any, I've had only positive things with them. So LCOG, we're going to put Commissioner Buck on that, and were we going to add you as an alternate?
That's what I
Commissioner
had, was
Bernie?
Buck and Bernie listed.
Okay, very good. El Rapa, I want to hear from all the commissioners on this. I think you heard Commissioner Bozovich discuss it. It is an organization that meets monthly. They do make decisions. Commissioner Bozovich are you the president of the board at this time?
Yeah, I'm the current board chair.
Okay,
Yeah.
so I guess I would say for purposes of this
There is
year.
a vice chair, though, that has served as chair, so it's not,
Yeah.
if I do leave, we
Yeah.
have leadership.
My view is that we should continue that leadership, but recognize this is an annual process. And if your year ends, when does that year end?
We actually, the chair, vice chair, they usually do in February, so there's only really 2 meetings that
Oh.
it would impact.
Okay,
So
okay.
that's just.
Do you want to keep being on it?
I like working with that organization,
Okay.
but I will say a couple things here. One, it's the air protection agency here. And if there's going to be a focus on, and change in focus on some of the environment issues, I may not be the person that represents board majority sentiment there. 2, it also, probably the biggest thing we've dealt with over the last 10 years is Oak Ridge.
Yeah.
So, that's.
Do you know if we can make a change sort of mid-year?
Yeah.
What's the expression for that? Changing horses in the middle of the street?
We just, basically we notify El Rapa
Yeah.
that we've changed
Okay.
who's the appointment.
I think based on what I'm hearing, I would recommend that we just keep Jay's name in the box, and at some point, we may or may not revisit that. Okay? Any further comments on the Lane Regional Air Protection Agency matter? Okay, LTD has a strategic planning committee. I've been on that committee years ago. It's dominantly now Springfield because that's where the LTD is working on their other routes. How do you feel, Commissioner Bernie, about being the successor on that?
I have no problem putting my name with a question mark so that I
Okay.
can study that. if
Very
that would
good.
be okay.
That'd be good. Yeah, that's an important function. Do we know whether that committee invites several commissioners, one commissioner?
Invite one.
One is your understanding? Okay. Okay. Is it specific to Springfield? Did they say we want the Springfield commissioner?
No, Commissioner Lycan just happened to be the one serving, and they actually reached out to us directly, asking us who would be replacing him, and even if we wanted to continue on. And I believe Mr. Mokrahysky brought it up at a board meeting last year, and the decision was we did want to stay on, and we would bring it back
Okay,
on this.
very good.
And in fact, much of their work is focused on North Eugene and West Eugene at this point in time. So they could, let's question mark us both, and you and I can discuss it perhaps?
That'd be great.
Okay.
Okay. Do we want to list then Commissioner Farr and Commissioner Bernie, both?
And why don't we talk about it and make a decision between the two of us?
So both
And
names,
then-
question marks, and we'll,
Yeah.
yeah.
And then get it to Ms. Jones.
The MPC, I outlined that I hope that Commissioner Bernie and I would be the reps to the MPC.
And I will say it's with great reluctance that I would give that position up, but I do understand the reasoning and
Okay. The Oregon Coastal Zone Management Association, we usually have our West Lane Commissioner. Any change there? I see none. Travel in Lane County, do we have question marks on Commissioner Farr and Commissioner Bernie, or what have you
I
got?
just had Commissioner Bernie only.
Okay. Did you want to have that be both you and Commissioner Bernie?
Yeah, I think so. And let's discuss the propriety. One person is a voting member, and then there'll be an alternate. So maybe you and I can have a lunch and talk about it.
That would be perfect.
All right.
You like sushi?
Well, I've it on good authority that you do, so.
So now we're down to the standing committees. Let's briefly review the
Now, these are all the committees.
facilities would be, if I were to just sort of give my perspective on this, it says first Monday of every month. How about first Wednesday of every month?
Yeah, now, the rest of the committees, the standings are all the ones that you wanted to move to Wednesdays, if I'm
Yeah,
not mistaken.
and so the finance and audit is the third Thursday of every month.
And it is scheduled for next week at this point in time.
And the legislative committee as needed, again, with the idea of as needed. Yeah, go ahead, Mr.
I just was going
Mokorowski.
to suggest that for efficiency's sake, if this is doable from a staff perspective, and you're going to have the entire board here on a Wednesday, typically these meetings, facilities committee, yesterday we had a facilities committee, went 30 minutes, 45 minutes. Finance and audit, oftentimes it's 30 to 40, it might go an hour, hour and a half, if we've
Or
longer.
it might be 10 minutes.
Oftentimes,
be
it's
10 minutes.
canceled last minute.
So if you're calling all the commissioners in, and you need at least 3 commissioners, for efficiency's sake, it may make sense, and given we have 2 committees that meet monthly, and you're gonna pick a Wednesday, say 9 to 11 a.m., whatever Wednesday, first Wednesday of the month or whatever, for both of those. That way you've asked all the commissioners to come in, we can get, easier to get a majority, and then you have them there for 2 hours, as opposed to having to come in on
And it could be if the board work is mostly done on Tuesdays and there isn't a Wednesday meeting, which I would predict actually with 2 new members, with lots of questioning, we're likely to have more Wednesday meetings. But my sense is that, you know, if we could do it around the scheduling of the housing, the Homes for Good board meeting, which is what, the third Wednesday? When is the housing for,
It's third or fourth, depending on how we're,
It's the same
Depends
day
on
as
our
mental
down
health
weeks.
advisory at the same
yeah.
time.
So one thing I would consider,
got moved up to 1:30 though, or 2.
yeah.
Yeah, they moved it up a half hour, an hour, I can't
Yeah.
remember which.
So one thing we could do is think about having it so on the days when these committees are going to be meeting, that we have them on the same day as the Homes for Good meeting. Because the commissioners are going to have to come in for 2.5 or 3 hours for the Homes for Good meeting.
Yeah, except we probably cannot do that because those are generally in the afternoon, if I'm not mistaken, at 2 or 2:30 or something, which would mean you would put these committee meetings earlier. If you want the full board there, we now have a board meeting that needs to be televised.
Yep.
The city of Eugene has Harris Hall and,
When do they have Harris Hall on Wednesdays?
and they have Metro Television
Yeah, when do they have the,
from 11:30 to 2.
okay. So
so-
is it possible then we would do sort of 9 to 11:30?
Yeah, that's what, or 9 to, yeah.
9 to 11?
Yeah.
Okay. And that's because of the television, but then are the Homes for Good meetings televised?
No.
Yeah,
Typically not.
they're not our board meetings, so I don't
Yeah.
know what they do with
But what I'm looking for is if the commissioners have to be here and the television is available from 9 to 11, then
Right.
that's when I'm
Right.
hearing we would do the Wednesday meeting.
Yeah, I believe that's what Mr. Mokohiski was getting at, was
Yeah.
that maybe we pick a Wednesday. We're going to have to work with those committees to
Right.
see what works with the rest of them, because they're made up, for example, Finance and Audit is made up of a lot of people who we have to work with their schedules on Wednesday. Eventually, it'll
Yeah.
work out,
Yeah,
but
Jay?
So I want to go back to the idea of having these standing committees be committees of the whole again. You know, particularly when I think about what's done in these committees, because I've served on several of them, except with the exception of Finance and Audit and Policy and Procedures. Facilities Committee, one of the things we do is we review the capital improvements plan and draft form and go back and forth and talk about that, and we talk about projects. That one probably is pretty easy to do in a public setting in some ways, except for we are reviewing a draft plan, which kind of gets, you know, to some interesting things. Occasionally, we're talking about security issues as part of facilities, which sometimes isn't great to have televised. You know, in particular, I think, you know, we've talked about building security and changes in security systems. So I know it's still a public meeting, folks can attend, but the difference between having on record, on the internet, in video, discussions of security issues of our buildings is not what I think is the greatest thing in the world. Legislative committee. I realize, that I'm not going to be the assigned person to legislative committee now, because I don't represent the board's majority's, opinion on some legislation. But a lot of the discussion, legislative committee about bills, et cetera, is not stuff I would necessarily want to see televised, where we start talking about committee members and their personal agendas and whether or not we want to take a stance here, whether we want to back away because we know that we've got this other thing, and you start talking about all the, the reasons why we want to take a pro or con or leave something alone. And some of those discussions would not be the world's best to have televised for the public, with staff. The staff that knows the various committee members, staff that knows the issues. There are still a public meeting. The public can come and sit in on the meeting and listen to that. Having record of that for potential legislators to review us talking about their personal agendas and how we might, make them angry or not angry, might not be the greatest thing to have on the internet in a video record. So there was a reason why these committees were formed and done as less than the majority of the board. And to kind of give a first review, and no decisions are made in these committees. They can move something to the board for a decision. But a lot of those discussions in those committees being done as a subcommittee, not televised, can be done a lot more openly. It's going to be really difficult, particularly legislative committee. Half of what we talk about in legislative committee never gets to the board because most of it is, we don't really, that's not a matter of county concern, let's just leave that hot potato alone, And it never comes up on the list even that comes to the board for taking a pro or con position on, so that we can give Alex direction. So I would strongly recommend staying with our current format,
So
the way we run these standing committees.
to be a little bit expedient on time, because
Too late for that.
Yeah.
I know, you need to go to lunch and we still have a courthouse. My recommendation at this time would be that I pull standing committees off onto a separate board order, and we can have a discussion about how you'd like to handle those at the next meeting.
That's fine, and I want to apologize. I wanted to cut this meeting off at noon. I just looked at my clock. So I think what I'd like to do is just come back at 1:30 and we'll pick this up. What do you think of that?
Well, we really need to get to the courthouse item, which the discussion on the courthouse before
of
your
course.
So
So why don't we do the courthouse item at 1:30, give commissioners at least an hour break, come back, have the courthouse discussion, and then go back to the rest of this.
I believe you're going to be past 5 o'clock by then.
Okay.
Well, because you're,
We can always
No, he's
do
coming-
this
he's gonna
tomorrow,
do the
too.
court-
We
he's
can
gonna-
always
you're
do
gonna
this
do the
tomorrow after our
courthouse dis-
budget meeting.
you're going to do the courthouse discussion, you're now saying at 1:30, right?
Yeah.
How
We
long?
got to do that before the meeting with the judge and the legislators.
30 minutes, okay.
Yeah.
And then we can come back, that's fine, we'll come back to this and then go to 3:30. We do need to give Metro time to reset this room for your 3:30 meeting.
So say we could have from 1:30 to 3 to have the briefing about the courthouse, and if we have any time, to go back to this. But we have to clear out and have a recess at 3 o'clock so they can set the room up, you guys can set the room up for 3:30. Okay.
Darn near done with this.
Commissioner Bernie?
I was
Okay,
just- I
all
was
right,
just agreeing.
so let's do, you agreeing with her? Okay. Okay, so let's do this, let's take a break now, we'll have a recess now, come back at 1:30, we'll do the briefing on the courthouse. We will do what we can between that, conclusion of that and 3 o'clock on the remainder of this, and then we'll have the recess at 3 o'clock.
So I guess, just for one last clarification, I'm not sure why you want to come back with the standing committees, because we're not going to make a decision today, right?
Correct.
So I would propose I bring back a board order with everything that we've got so far. I bring back a separate board order on the ONC, so you can vote on that. And then I have the standing committees separated next week too for further discussion.
That's fine.
And then you can be done with this today.
That's
as of
fine.
now.
And then we won't have to, then we're done with that.
Yeah, there's
Okay.
just too many
Yep, very
unknowns on
good.
the standing.
Thanks for wrapping that up.
Thank
Very
Still gotta
helpful.
get to commissioners' business too.
Okay, so we will go for a recess until 1:30. We'll come back to Harris Hall. If it's set up for the briefing, we won't have to take that recess at 3 o'clock. If it isn't, and you need the time to set up for the briefing at 3:30, then we'll keep going right through, and we'll just welcome the legislators when they get here.
So we're good to go?
Well, they're conferring right now.
I'll call Metro and one way or the other.
Okay, so at this time, the Lane County Board of Commissioners will be in recess until 1:30 PM.